This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
One-on-one down the sidelines. Caught! Flag! Touchdown! Brown doing it for the Cats!
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Here is Scatterboo. On top, balance, stays on his feet, and rumbles into the end zone.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
And it's going to be a double pass. Aller loads, fires, deep. Man, there is Warren. Got it! Touchdown, Penn State.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at UnitePrivateNetworks.com.
Tyron Lacey, the motion man. Pump fake, Nussmeier goes back, shoulder, touchdown! Tyron Lacey, and LSU wins!
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
You just heard some of the highlights that Paul put together of yet another dramatic weekend in college football. Some great games, especially as far as endings down the stretch as the day was able to wrap it up. But a lot to get to, including Texas absolutely annihilating Oklahoma. Some notes on OU's offense, the Oregon-Ohio State thriller, Penn State's comeback against USC, and then the LSU ending when it looked like they were dead and buried to score to tie and then win the game in overtime. And, guys, Iowa State, BYU, Arizona State, and K-State in the Big 12 get it done.
Yeah, Arizona State was dominant, like physically dominant over Utah on Friday night. Iowa State and BYU are for real. It was a crazy weekend all the way around. I don't know how many. I didn't watch a single really bad game this weekend after the 11 o'clock window was over. Like once that window was over from 2 o'clock on was just badass game after badass game. It was unbelievable.
Hold on, we can't hear you. You got it? Go ahead, Craig.
No.
Okay.
I'll be over there.
All right. Yeah, it was unbelievable. Some great games down the stretch. The Big 12, these teams did flex their muscle in Iowa State with their win at West Virginia. They just eventually wore them down. BYU with what they were able to do, of course, with a huge audience watching them. Arizona on Friday night. Kenny Dillingham, of course, and the fans going nuts after their win. And then K-State going into Boulder, back and forth. Looked like everything was fine. And then here comes Shedeur and company. Although a game that Colorado may have lost some stars, and I don't know if this week or the next week or two, as some teams, again, are trying to win the battle of attrition as well. Here is Max Olson. There's a couple of notes here. Oklahoma's offense, they had no chance. As soon as Texas scored and took the lead 7-3, you're wondering, okay, unless this game ends up like 12-7, there's nothing that they're going to be able to do. Hawkins couldn't do anything. They can't run the ball. Texas overwhelmed them. OU's defense, even though in the end gave up 34 points, in the end, you could still see what they have there. But Texas with so many different weapons. Oklahoma's offense generated 13 plays of 20 yards or more this season. That is 133rd out of all the FBS teams. Only 0-5 Kennesaw State has fewer 20-plus gains as far as on offense so far. And then here's another nugget on Oklahoma. This is from Chris Vanini. From 1965 to 2021, Oklahoma scored 3 or fewer points against Texas just once. From 1965 to 2021, Oklahoma scored 3 points or fewer in the Red River rivalry just once. And now it's happened twice. Nothing 3 years ago. loaded, but they haven't even looked the same. So I don't know what's going to happen, but right now they do appear to be, and with all due respect to Oregon, Dylan Gabriel, and what Dan Lanning has in a huge win against Ohio State, that was dramatic too. I don't know. I mean, they can have a bad day, turn it over multiple times. I mean, play around with their food, and you never know what might happen. But we will get to all of that and much, much more. Are we good to go now?
Yeah. Craig, can you give us a test?
Test 1, 2.
All right, let's go to Craig now. Craig, your thoughts about just overall. Joey McGuire is going to join us at the bottom of the hour. Ari Temkin from the Big 12 Radio Network at around 3:45. Craig?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of great games this weekend, a lot of fun, a lot of crazy finishes, and, yeah, I mean, just a lot to unpack. So I guess let's get in the process of doing that. Obviously, you mentioned in Oklahoma there. Not thrilled by that outcome, not surprised. Felt like at least Michael Hawkins gave them a little something different that hopefully could open some things up for them, or at least give them a little bit of a jolt from time to time that Jackson Arnold couldn't do by throwing it to the other team too often. But clearly they're just a mess far beyond any player, any position, and it's very interesting to hear a lot of Oklahoma folks over the weekend pining for the days when they had great offense. And remember when we had all those great quarterbacks? Like, yeah, that was a different staff. That was a different guy. That's the one that you've, rightfully been complaining and wishing the worst on for the last couple of years. Not your fault you lost that guy. He made that choice, but just interesting to kind of hear the reflections on what was not that long ago, and to hear so many who now talk about Texas and see this massive gap that maybe is as big as it's ever been between those two in terms of talent level and just the strengths and weaknesses. So Texas, I don't know who's going to beat them. Maybe Georgia this weekend. That's not out of the realm of possibility, although I don't think we're all that overly impressed by Georgia. But, I mean, they have a shot, and we'll see beyond that. But they're very, very good and rightfully the number one team in the country right now.
And in the past, they might have won a game like that, dominated Oklahoma. They have now won, it's like 11-6 the last 15, 18, whatever amount of years. But they could win a game like that and then trip on their tongue. Sarkisian seems to have them locked in emotionally, physically, and focused. That doesn't mean they might still not have one of those days, but they look so good.
Well, we need to see what happens when they play a team that can match them with offensive weapons. That has not happened yet this year. I'm not blaming Texas for that. It's just, they have not played a team. Now, this week they have Georgia. That should be that's a team that can match them weapon for weapon more than anybody else that they've played so far. And their two tests have been Michigan and Oklahoma. Both those teams are built on their defense, do not have a ton of offensive weapons. So we'll see what happens to them and how they respond to being in what could be more of a scoring match. But even then, they just look so complete right now.
Yeah, no, they really do across the board. It was almost like the one thing you could pick at was the fact that Auburn, who's always been so money when it comes to kicking, missed a field goal. But even then, they look really good. Oregon, Dylan Gabriel and company with a nice win, a great win at home as they storm the field, as they get excited about beating the Buckeyes in what was a classic game as one of the best matchups perhaps the rest of the year in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I had flashbacks to Will Howard against Texas last year in that last drive where, just made, a couple bad decisions, especially the one right there on the last play of the game. And, for better or for worse, Ryan Day in these big games does not have the best track record so far for Ohio State fans. But these are the only ones he loses. I think you would, if you asked, a lot of college football fans, would you love to win almost every game you play except for the times occasionally when you play a team that's as good as you are? They would say yes, but Ohio State, they won a title again really, really badly. And it's been a decade since that happened, since the very first CFP, and he hasn't beaten Michigan. He lost here to Oregon. It doesn't really change their status all that much, but he's going to have to deal with the headache for a little bit.
Yeah, it was an excellent game. Autzen seemed like it was rocking. Just a very cool atmosphere, I'm sure, to be a part of for everybody there. And a fun road trip for the Buckeyes. It's now a conference footprint, so that's pretty cool too. And I'm sure that was super enjoyable to know you're going to have a game like that, a trip like that every few years or so, and vice versa. And it lived up to the billing of 2 versus 3. I thought it was an excellent and entertaining game. And there at the end, Will Howard looking like a guy who K-State looking like he's moved on well and good, and K-State moved on and everybody won. And, then at the same time, there's this massive mistake at the end that just kind of tarnishes everything because, what are you doing? I mean, what are you doing or thinking? And I couldn't help but just feel uncomfortable for him as he was laying on the turf, realizing that he just ran out the freaking clock with his slide. I just was just speechless for a second watching that game. Did that really just end how I think that just ended? And I think everybody probably felt that way. And I'm sure it wasn't maybe so much quiet on Ohio State fans' ends. They were probably screaming bloody murder watching a game end like that. But, yeah, beyond the conclusion of it, all the rest of it was peak college football, especially for somebody who didn't have any skin in the game. So that was awesome, save for just the decision there at the end, which I'm sure has been really tough for Will Howard to have to deal with. And so we'll see how the Buckeyes pivot from that. But a brutal way to lose a game. And at the same time, you went toe-to-toe on the road, and you're among the best in the league, and your season's not over by any means, but wouldn't mind seeing them run that back in the playoff or something like that.
Again, I mentioned Penn State came back. They had a flea flicker to a center, 44, who caught a touchdown pass, and then they won the game. And Alar, was that right? The quarterback, Drew Alar, was very, very good. Drew Aller was very, very good. And obviously USC looked like they had something. The only question mark there is Lincoln Riley with another loss. USC had the ball near midfield, had timeouts left, and it was almost as if they were trying to make sure they got into overtime. They had the ball, and you have Moss, the quarterback. And he even mentioned in the postgame that he just did not want to give Penn State the ball back. Well, eventually, when you have it and you're around the 40 or so, you got to try to do something with that, so he's taking heat for that too.
But they wouldn't have necessarily given him the ball back.
Yeah, I mean, you punt to get it down to the 15-yard line and make him go in 20 seconds. Yeah.
Look, James Franklin is not going to, Anthony Kotelnicki or no, with less than a minute left, and you pin him deep behind the 20, going to get irresponsible. It's not in his nature. So, you're the team you're the home dog here, right? You were down at home, or you were picked to lose at home. You're winning most of the game. Now you're tied. You got a chance to go win it. All you need is about 17 yards to get into field goal range. You've got all 3 timeouts in a minute left, and you wasted 45 seconds of it overall.
Yep.
It was insane.
Yep.
I don't know what's going on with Lincoln Riley. He's lost a little bit of his.
He was very defensive.
Fastball.
I watched the post game from Ryan Abraham's feed, and he was very defensive about it. And people were they were asking him about where they are, and you can imagine he's not happy with it, and also starting to feel, and has, I think, felt that pressure. Also, real quickly, one more game in the top 25, and then we'll get to some of the top 25 teams and what the Big 12 did, because some people separated themselves. Garrett Ross, LSU, with a win. Mm-hmm. Huge touchdown from Nussmeier to get into overtime, and then the touchdown to Lacey to win it. And a big-time win against Lane Kiffin and the Rebels.
No, that was a tremendous game. I mean, that was one where I don't think Nussmeier played his best game. You could go back and you could make a lot of corrections there. I think there were some plays where he had opportunities to run the ball and elected to force some ball in some tight windows. I think LSU's defense played phenomenal, especially Whit Weeks at the linebacker position. He had 18 tackles, 2 tackles for a loss. It was just a phenomenal game. I'm not naive enough, though, to think that if Trey Harris doesn't get injured for Ole Miss, that the Rebs don't come out on top, and if Trey Harris doesn't drop that initial pass. But overall, I think LSU's clicking pretty good.
Yeah, they're in a nice little run at 5-1. Craig, anything on LSU Ole Miss?
Yeah, it was an awesome game. Picked LSU and was feeling pretty down about that during most of that game, as Ole Miss looked to be in pretty good control, but never really separated. And mentioned there's some injuries involved in that, and just the ebb and flow of that game was really interesting, because it felt like it was just Ole Miss's for the majority, and then here comes the Tigers there at the end, and obviously some huge plays. That touchdown pass to send it to overtime was just, I mean, that was incredible. And then obviously struck pretty fast there when they got the opportunity in OT. So great win by Brian Kelly and the Tigers. Tiger Stadium on a Saturday night, man. Like that's why I picked them as much as anything else, and it paid off. But very interesting now on the Ole Miss side of things. They have no room for error. I'm sure there will be some argument for why some 3-loss Ole Miss team or something deserves to get in the playoff here in a few weeks if it comes to that. But right now they don't have anything left to give. They got to be pretty careful if they want to get a shot at the playoff, which might not be a big deal in the grand scheme of things when it comes to Ole Miss football, but given all the hype coming into this season, that is a big deal. I mean, there was no shying away from the fact that they were well set up for this year, and this was the year, and they had the talent and all that, and they're 10th in the SEC right now. I mean, it's just a couple losses, but because there's a couple of them, they don't know if they can afford a third now. They basically have to be perfect, and any shot at the SEC championship is dwindling. So, yeah, that was a big loss for Ole Miss and a huge win for Brian Kelly. He really needed that.
I think there's a lot of people around Ole Miss or the SEC or follow college football that kind of say, if not now, when? Well, I mean, when you've built this roster, you've got a multi-year starter at quarterback in Jackson Dart who's really good. You've got Trey Harris putting up Heisman numbers. You went out and got Princely Uman-Milan, and you got Walter Nolan. You got these guys on defense. You added plus, like, the only thing you lost was Quinshon Judkins, and Bentley and Parrish have been really good for them in his absence as he's gone to Ohio State. Now, down the stretch, they've got Oklahoma after the bye, at Arkansas, Georgia at home, another bye at Florida and Mississippi State. So this might be their last loss, or it might be one more to Georgia on the surface, but Arkansas is no slouch. Oklahoma's going to want to get back at somebody, although I don't know if they have enough offense. So you never know what can happen in these things, and the Egg Bowl's a rivalry.
We have the Big 12, 3 teams ranked in the top 25, and Iowa State, where they win in Morgantown, and they look methodical. Their run game is so physical. They're number 9. BYU is 13. And then Kansas State goes into Boulder and has to, in the end, a shootout when the Buffaloes came back and then Avery Johnson made a play and K-State wins the game. They held Colorado to minus 26 yards rushing in that game. Some sacks involved in that too, but there was no running game from Colorado. So 3 teams among the top 17. It's a heck of a story. Now, Craig, with Travis Hunter and Jimmy Horn, the possibility that Hunter with a shoulder injury did not come back. Those are weapons. Obviously, they have Wester and many others, but that we got to wonder about Travis Hunter, his injury, Jimmy Horn too, and what that means to the offense.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Iowa State and BYU deserve the most kudos because they're sitting there at the top of the standings right now, and I think BYU in particular has a beef when it comes to where they're ranked. I think they're getting a lot of disrespect right now as opposed to if they were in another conference and sitting at 6-0 and a couple of the road wins that they have, I think they'd be getting a lot more rub, but that is perhaps life in the Big 12. I don't want to make this like it's them against the world all the time because I think that's getting a little bit oversaturated. But I do think that this is an example of where your conference matters and where the perception's a little bit different because I do think BYU is getting a little bit of a lack of respect.
They have beaten SMU, who's in the top 25, and they smoked Kansas State, who's ranked 17.
So I don't know that there's too many in front of them that have better wins than those two. So I think that's where they're getting a little bit of disrespect. Iowa State in the top 10, that's certainly deserved. And those two don't play in the regular season. So if you're looking for how the Big 12 can get 2 playoff teams, well, there you go. Those two go play in the championship game, unbeaten. They play tight. And then both of them get the nod. That's the simplest path to the Big 12. Getting 2 teams into the playoff is Iowa State and BYU at this point. But, there's other scenarios. That's just the most clear-cut one. But, yeah, Colorado, that was an excellent game. Great win by Kansas State, and they're one of those that could be in those other scenarios with just 1 loss right now. Avery Johnson growing a lot from that BYU trip and just the team as a whole from looking like they were deer in headlights to handling the road really, really well. Even though the atmosphere wasn't maybe quite what it was in Provo, it was still electric based on everything that we saw and heard. And that was a great effort from Colorado as well, especially given that they were by the end without many of their top players. I've always given Shedeur respect, and so I'll continue to do that. I'm glad that others are, not going that same narrative early in the year of like, oh, Colorado this and that, and now just watch Colorado, you're like, damn, they're actually pretty good. Like, they're pretty entertaining, and I hope that they get healthy because they are a fun watch, and they bring eyeballs to the league, and they're also a good team when they're fully healthy. So that was a crushing loss, but a great win for K-State that really saw Avery Johnson take a big step forward. Obviously, guys like Giddens were tremendous. And, yeah, Kleiman had to be over the moon with that one. But Colorado, all eyes are definitely on those injuries right now.
And go ahead.
They got to be able to run the ball, though. I mean, they really do. Like, if they want to get back in the conference race, like, they've got to do it more often. But they found ways around it. But especially at the end of games, they need to be able to run the ball and take the clock down.
Well, and there's a couple of teams in the conference, of course, who might have a chance to dip their toes in that top 25 water. One of them, Baylor, plays in Lubbock this weekend, and Joey McGuire, head coach, will join us here in just a moment. And yet, back to the Cam Rising drama. I mean, I hate it for the guy. He didn't look good at all Friday night. I got home in time to watch a lot of the end of that game. I thought he looked old, he looked rusty, and he is. And a huge win for Kenny Dillingham and the Sun Devils. Out indefinitely, Isaac Wilson will be the starter moving forward. And yet more now on when is he coming back. And if I'm sorry, he's had a really some nice moments in his career. But if I am Utah, it's time to move forward and not always wonder who's available. If he's available, fine. If he can play, fine. But they now move forward, and that was a really nice win for Arizona State.
It's almost as if you're 25 or 26 years old and aren't in the NFL yet. Maybe you're not as good as we thought.
Well, he's had a couple of years where his injuries would have affected perhaps him being drafted, correct?
Yeah, but also –
and now here we are again.
Okay, if he's been hurt so much that he can't go to the league and he's got to come back and play, well, the injuries are a thing. Now he's injured again out of the lower leg injury, according to Kyle Whittingham. You know, this is, you know, it's always a young man's game, and maybe you get too old to play college football. I don't know. It doesn't seem to be working out for most.
Well, one thing that we're not mentioning is that he technically could come back from an 8th year, and they are undecided on that. So I sure as hell hope he does not. I think that would be bad for the sport, and I think that Cam Rising at this point, needs to either go to the NFL if that's even a possibility, or semi-pro or whatever, man. But I just think at this stage, like it's getting ridiculous if we're talking about an 8th year for him, and especially given that there's no proof that he could come back and actually be able to last, because he can't last now. What's another year going to do on top of that? Wish him the best, and I'll say this. The first thing I think about that game is not about Cam Rising, is that was a great win for Kenny Dillingham and Arizona State. That was a program-building win. They are sitting in a really nice spot right now, and they're believing, and they've got some talent. And I think, you know, just so long as Sam Levitt keeps progressing and Scadaboo stays healthy, like there's something to this team, and they're going to win some more games down the stretch. So that was a huge win just for a program rebuilding. So I've been a big fan of Kenny Dillingham's. We've mentioned that several times over the last few months, and it's you know, easy to continue to feel that way about the direction that he's taken the Sun Devils. But with Rising, that was hard to watch. Like, that was one where even the staunchest Kyle Whittingham supporters are like, what are we doing? Like, why is he in the game? He looks terrible. He's clearly hurt. I don't know how that hit on the sidelines took the toll that it did. Like, I mean, that screwed him up beyond anybody's comprehension. And then for him to come back and then get hurt in a seemingly different way, it's like, are you serious? Like, what are we doing here? And then to stay in the game, clearly unable to move very much, nothing on his throws, taking hits. And I don't know, man, that was just all very strange. It was almost like they were trying to prove the point of, like, see how hurt he is? And it's like, we got it. Like, take him out of the game now because he's clearly very hurt. Like, can Isaac Wilson not come in at this point? And they just left him out there. So I commend Cam Rising for the toughness. Thanks, Kyle Whittingham, for proving to us how hurt he is. But, like, take his ass off the field, man. Like, this isn't cutting it. So not surprised to see the news today. Hate that for him. Hate that for Utah. It definitely derailed their season. But we don't need to see this ran back again.
Yeah, I sometimes think that we're all too enamored with the Willis Reed type kind of thing of the world.
That was 3 years ago.
But, like, you know, the guy comes in and guts it out. Kirk Gibson.
He played about 2 minutes in that game.
Yeah, exactly. Like, Kirk Gibson came in and had one at bat and a pinch hitting role and hit a home run. But sometimes, and I think we're starting to see the shift in this, that when the trainer and the doctor say he's hurt and he goes, I'm not, go, hey, don't listen to him. He's trying to play.
Yep.
That's admirable, but do it. I'll point to Mike Elko and Riley Leonard last year. Riley Leonard gets hurt in that game against FSU. They're in control. He was trying to run up and down the sideline, and Mike Elko's like, you saw him go, I love you.
Yeah.
But this is not going to happen.
It's like a fighter, Joe Frazier against Ali in the last Thrilla in Manila, when even his trainer finally just said, man, no, I'm not letting you go out. Because he would have gone out there, and he couldn't see his eyes. And he was a warrior, but there's a time when you have to just throw in the towel. Real quickly before we get Joey McGuire, how about Scatterboo in Arizona State? Here's a note. He's the offensive player of the week in the Big 12. But how about this note? As good as Ashton Genty has been at Boise State, and he is unbelievable, has he been taken out of games they've been winning so much and probably has lost 4 to 6 quarters of play? The one player who has had more broken or missed tackles this year, other than Ashton Genty at 48, is Scatterboo from Arizona State, 49. And I watched that game. That is one. He ought to be a part of the Marines. That's the way he plays football. With all due respect, I'm not making light of that. He plays violent, and it's just fun to watch him. Golly.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely a guy you could see playing for like Army or Navy or something and not skipping a beat. But, yeah, he's just an incredibly fun player to watch, one of the more entertaining players in the Big 12 and in college football as a whole as well. He and Taj Brooks have definite argument about, running back one in the league this year, but I imagine both will be on that first team all Big 12. Certainly if the season ended today, that would be the case. Maybe K-State has something to say about that ultimately, but like those two are pretty fair choices at this point as the top 2 running backs in the league. And he's the heart of that team. Sam Levitt's done some good things, and defensively they've done some good things, and Jordan Tyson on offense has made some big plays. But, I mean, that team goes as Scatterboo goes, and that was certainly the case when they really needed him on Friday night as well. He helped, put that game over the top and seal it, and especially the one touchdown run that he had the cameraman captured it. I don't know who to credit there, but they had the video of the face-to-face of, like, watching him break all the tackles in slow motion, and it was really, really cool to see somebody capture that and get to really see it slowed down and just how incredible his balance is. He's got tremendous balance, obviously very physically tough, and, yeah, that was a massive win for them. Banged up rising or not, that's the kind of win that Kenny Dillingham needs for this program to keep building, and so building they are, and we'll see what happens with Utah the rest of the way. But I know there were more than just Sun Devils fans who were at least smiling a little bit seeing that result based on how the offseason went with all the Utah fans that were seemingly leaning into the role of villain and anti-Big 12 and all of that.
They were going to run the conference, and they've lost to 2 former Pac-12 teams, so that could be an excuse for them. Carson Hansen. Now, he's had almost 100 yards the last 2 games. Here's another guy that's coming up and is a freaking battering ram for Iowa State. And they've got 3 running backs, Jackson, Sama. They have dudes, man. But he is, oh, my goodness, I've watched him against West Virginia, and he is an absolute battering ram.
If Iowa State had to get home through a mountain in West Virginia, they could have done it with him the other day. By the way, as an unofficial Dallas Cowboys scout, one that they don't pay or ask my opinion, I'm looking at 2 positions for them this year. It's defensive tackle and running back, and Cam Scatterboo is on my approved list.
Yeah, I mean, the Big 12 is loaded with running backs.
I think our next guest has a little bit of experience.
We are now joined
Scatterboo.
by Joey McGuire. You're exactly right, Craig, head coach at Texas Tech. What's up, man?
How you doing, guys? Good to see y'all.
We're doing well. We were just talking about Scatterboo at Arizona State. You have Taj Brooks. And, I mean, there's just really Giddens at K-State. There's a lot of these running backs. You faced Scatterboo. Now, you won that game. It was a huge win, and you guys are winning games. How would you describe him?
Really physical. We played really, really well on defense. We held him to 60 yards rushing. Now, he did we brought a sim pressure, and they threw a pass to him out of the backfield, and he ended up catching it and going about 60, 65 yards. But as far as, man, he is I listened to some of the things you were talking about. He is a battering ram. I mean, he is a very physical runner. He's got great balance. And the more you give him the ball, I think the better he gets.
You guys, your first couple games, Joey, I know were heartburn games for you. I mean, all games are probably heartburn games one way or the other, but you guys have really come together. The Arizona State game was one of them where you had to tough it out on defense. You had to ward off that. How much does a win where you don't win it maybe necessarily in the normal style you're used to build confidence of, hey, we just held this team to 22 points here and contained Cam Scatterbo as much as anybody has?
Yeah, it was big. You know, that was you're opening Big 12. You're opening against they're a really good football team. You know, all the way across the board, defensive front, linebackers, and man, it was a huge win. You know, and man, those first two games, really all of them. I mean, I think I had more hair when the season started, and I don't have a lot of hair anyway. And we're just finding ways to win games, and we found a way to play good defense against those guys, and found a way to win the game.
Coach, been really impressed by your wide receiver group. I mean, there's just a ton of targets for Baron Morton out there, and maybe not guys who were the first names off everybody's lips when thinking about the best receivers in the country, but certainly in the league right now, you've got multiple guys who are making big plays for you. Just how have you seen that group grow alongside the rest of this offense? Yeah,
you know, that was I thought that we made a big upgrade when we went and got Josh Kelly out of the transfer portal, and then Caleb Douglas. You know, we had a relationship with him. Actually, whenever I was at Baylor and Juice was at Baylor, he wanted to come back to Texas. And so I thought those were two big additions. And then Coy Aiken, he ended the year in such a good way. He's just built off of it. So, you know, that's one thing offensively. We have Taj Brooks, and man, I think he's the best back in the country. But that's the one thing that's really helped us be balanced is we're better at the receiving core. We have more guys that, you know, can go get the ball. And then you add in our tight ends. I mean, we were really, you know, he spreads the ball around a lot. I mean, Josh is leading it, but, you know, Coy and Caleb have a lot of catches too.
Joey, sometimes when you hear about a team that plays so hard, it might not be a team that's winning a lot. Man, they play so hard. But you guys are winning. You're winning the close games, which we all know the history of the Big 12. Whoever can do that is usually playing sometime in early December. And then, of course, at a bowl game or more. But you really have a team that seems like they love to play the game. Is that a compliment to everybody involved?
Yeah, I mean, it has a lot to do with the coaches and the strength staff. I mean, everybody in this building. I go back to 2019, and y'all remember this, how many close games we played in 2019 with Charlie Brewer, you know, leading us down right at the end, played great defense, you know, just tough teams. And that's the thing. We did a deep dive in who we were last year. We lost 2 games last year. Wyoming and Oregon were one, you know, single score games, and we lost. And in February, all we talked about as a coaching staff is just whatever game it is, whatever's going on, let's just find a way to win that game. I mean, there's going to be shootouts like Cincinnati and when we played them, and then there's going to be games that are going to be close games like the Arizona State game, or close games to get like the Arizona game, to where you just got to continue to just find a way to win the game. That, at the end of the day, that's all that matters. You know, I would love a 14-point win or a 21-point win, but it's not where we're at. And so we're just going to try to get the game into the fourth quarter and, you know, fight our tails off to come out, whether it's a 1-point victory or a 7-point victory, whatever it is. That's kind of, we're okay with that. You know, that's the one thing this team is. We're okay with it. We're gonna fight all 4 quarters and, you know, see what happens.
Okay, Coach, if I wanted to tackle Taj Brooks, if I'm squared up on him, what's the best way to do that? Would it be business decision and just try to swoop him up, or just don't?
Just don't. You know, I'm telling you, man, the guy is – I've never been around a running back quite like him, because, you know, his feet are always moving, but he might not be going forward or going to the side. He's so patient. And then whenever he gets going, he's 230 pounds. I mean, I don't know what he squats. I think we stopped him at 650 last year and just said, hey, there's no reason to squat any more than this. And he's just – and then the great thing about him, man, the guy is just a great human, man. He's fun to be around. He's a great leader. You know, he's a college graduate. I mean, he checks every box. That's what I tell every scout. He's going to be a great guy in the locker room. And then I think he's the best all-around back when you're talking about he's got great hands. He's very physical in pass pro. And then he just has a knack for making people miss and falling forward.
What's it been like to see so many young guys playing defensively? I mean, you guys have a very bright future as a result of that, I'd imagine. But at the same time, there's those growing pains as well. So just what's that dynamic been like, and how encouraging has it been to see the growth on that side of the football?
Yeah, it's exciting because we have, man. We I think there was a stat after the first or second game that we were playing the youngest team on defense and how many snaps our guys were playing. But, it's exciting. We've been banged up. We didn't have Lux for 3 games or 2 games, and he makes a big difference, our number one corner. And so we had to play some young corners, and then we've been banged up at safety. I'm just proud, guys come in and we try to get the game plan to where they can play really fast. And, you just got to adapt to what you have. I thought that was really big against Arizona because, we were playing with our third free safety. He had played some corner. We were banged up, but guys got through the game. And then, we had to leave some guys at home just because you could only dress 70 of some guys that we didn't know we could play that night. And so we were really young playing against a really, really good offense, especially a passing offense. They're pretty special.
Joey, Baylor has struggled again, and they just seem like about the time maybe they've turned the corner, they get a punt blocked or something happens, or they start poorly, or they start well. And you watched them. That's what you're getting ready for now. What is the biggest concern for you with them? Is it that they have not put 2 halves together and that's about to happen? And is that keep you up at all?
Yeah, it keeps me up. They're a good football team. I mean, honestly, they could easily be 4-2. I thought, whenever, and I've listened and I've watched them, and they had a bad start against BYU, but then they're throwing the ball in the end zone to win that game. And they had a good start against Iowa State. But, God, you go back to that Colorado game, that they played 4 quarters to 1 drive. It's just 1 drive and 1 play. And I think Sanders is the best quarterback in college football. By far, he is the best quarterback in college football. I don't think there's another quarterback in the nation that could play in that offense, do what they do, and play at the level that he's playing at. It's just my opinion, but I think he's really special. And, right up into that last drive and that last throw, they had that game won. And, man, it's hard to come back from those games. And you said it perfect, man. I'm nervous. Do they, come out and play 4 quarters against us? I expect they do. They haven't stopped playing hard. And then I know the old guys on that team. I got to coach them. I know how hard they're going to play on Saturday. And so it's the Big 12, man. I heard Kenny Dillingham say it, man. You look up and you look at a score and you're like, man, how did that happen? Or, man, I didn't think that was going to happen. That happens every single week in the Big 12. And so we've got to do a great job of preparing for a really good football team. I do think Sawyer has brought a lot of life to that offense. So, they've been able to score some points. And so we've got to do a good job of preparing for them.
It is a different offense than you guys have seen the last couple of years when you've played them. Very, very different. It's more similar schematically to yours, but still Jake Spavital's system is different. Does that present challenges for the guys who kind of think they may know Baylor a little bit more and have to know something else this year?
Yeah, they Spav's kind of out of the same tree as Kitley and Kingsbury and Dana and Holgerson and everybody. They've all got some of Leach's air raid in it. I think Sawyer's done a good job of running that offense. The receivers give you, they like Hal Presley just keeps making big plays. Josh has done a great job in the red zone. I think he's got 4 touchdowns over the last few games in the red zone. They've got 2 really good slots, that can create problems with you in space. And so we've played similar offenses, but those similar offenses have given us a lot of trouble. And so we've got to do a good job. We're getting healthier. Like Baylor, I think both of us will be as healthy as we've been, coming off this bye week. And so that's going to be good for both teams. But we've got to play well on defense. And one thing that we've been able to do is we caused a lot of turnovers, and we've scored off those turnovers. I think we scored 59 points in the last 4 weeks off of turnovers, and we've got to do the same thing on Saturday.
Coach, is that your new office? Are those part of the new digs? I don't think we've talked to you since the summertime, and just how all that transition has been going and having all that, I guess, pretty much done, or if not all done. What kind of a boost is that giving the program?
Yeah, it's incredible. This is the south end zone. My office is split. I've got a working office, and then I got what we call the closing room. It's pretty cool. I hope if y'all get to come out here on Saturday, it's going to blow your mind. I mean, the Jones AT&T Stadium looks really different. That south end's closed in. The double T is high as high. I mean, it once you see it, it really does. The first time you see the south end zone when you've been out here and watched the game, it's absolutely a game changer. It makes it so much louder. Also, we've got a new sound system, and then it closes in this end with a sound, and so it will be a louder environment on Saturday.
Joey, is there still any additional emotion with this game with you because you were here with Matt Rule, and then, of course, you left in the middle of the year because the opportunity was there for you to take over and start working on the offseason? Is there anything extra emotionally for you here? I'd be lying to say that there wasn't, because there is. Man, I love that place. It was so good to me and my family. Garrett's a Baylor Bear, and it'll always have a special place. I'm at Texas Tech because of my time at Baylor, and there's still some of the older guys that, Garmin Randolph and Matt Jones. I coached both of them as a position coach. They're like family to me. Steve Linton was on my team last year. He's like family to me. So, I've got a great care factor for those guys, great care factor for that coaching staff that I was a part of. But I do think that it's more like playing TCU, more like playing Oklahoma State, more like playing K-State, from the standpoint of we're far enough removed. We've both won games, and so it's a little bit different feeling. And then, man, we're right now, all we're trying to do is to get 1-0 and try to go 4-0 in the Big 12. So the mindset is like, we really don't care who we're playing. We just got to find a way to win that game. And so I think it's a little bit different than it has been the last 2 years. Last year was really emotional going back there. That was and Garrett was on the sideline. He had a bye week that week. And so that was pretty emotional last year. But I think we're kind of a little bit farther past that. And I have a great respect for those guys. And, I wish them luck for the rest of the year. I just want to get them on Saturday. You've had those issues with the games early in the year. You cleared that hurdle. Here you are at 5-1. You've won 4 in a row. You had the loss in Pullman, but now you got the win in Tucson. How important for the program, not just the wins, but doing that on the road in Arizona, and then also winning some close games, that's kind of it. And again, you still have to win others, but it seems like giving you an opportunity to be a part of the conversation at the end of November.
Yeah, one of my favorite words you just said, opportunity. We talk about it all the time, and not letting it pass you up, being ready for it. The Pullman game, they're a really good football team, but 28 didn't play, and 28's playing this Saturday. He really leads us, and so we always feel good whenever he's there. These close games have been big because I think it shows a toughness in your team, and it shows a belief in what you're trying to do as a program. And then it's been big for everything in recruiting, and the donors and our we sold out again. The Baylor game, the Colorado game's already sold out. The West Virginia game should be sold out. And so, I mean, it's making a big difference on this campus.
You have the Mahomes factor, of course, the new uniforms and much, much more. What are you wearing Saturday in that game against Baylor?
Well, it's homecoming, and whenever I close my eyes and think about Texas Tech, I think of a black helmet, red, jersey and black pants. And so we're wearing our traditional look for homecoming. And I will tell you, not only the South End Zone has been a game changer, Patrick and what he's done, Adidas and that partnership has been a game changer. I mean, I think our fans are really excited by what we're wearing. It's a very traditional look. Whenever you look at every single week what we've worn, and we've had a lot of good reviews. And then it's huge whenever you have Patrick come in and get to talk to the team. And we put out his uniform that we'll wear in a few weeks. But this week we're going with our traditional look and getting ready for a really great game.
Great to see you, man. Thank you so much I know you're busy. Other people want to talk to you too. Thanks for giving us time, and appreciate anything you give us when you have, especially during a game week.
Yeah, man, you know what I think about you guys and the job that you guys do. So I'm always here, and man, I just appreciate y'all and wreck them to all the Central Texas Red Raiders. I hope you are listening.
All right, they are. Joey McGuire, heck, they're all over the place. We have a huge contingent of Texas Tech alums and fans that are in the chat room. So there's Joey McGuire from Texas Tech on their game Saturday against Baylor. Last year, Taj Brooks, 170 yards, 31 carries. They couldn't tackle him. They're not the only team that couldn't do it. Morton threw 3 touchdowns, and they were just beating them up. Baylor had no chance in that game, losing 39-14. When we come back, Ari Temkin, his thoughts about the Big 12 this week in the games and last weekend too. In the top 25, this is 365 Sports. Petty Clinic, lowt.com. Dr. Kent Petty can help you become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, and used to be. Here's how he can help you out. 1 out of every 3 to 4 men have symptomatic issues of low testosterone. It might be you. Are you lethargic? Your energy seems like in the last couple of years or so has started to fade a little bit. You just don't have that all day long. Maybe you are active and you have a great diet, but for some reason you just don't feel right. It could be your testosterone level has dropped. Sex drive, that's a part of it. You hear about that all the time. Just watch any television show, game, whatever, and they have commercial after commercial about that. Your low T, your testosterone, if it drops, can create issues, even your sleep habits, or just something doesn't feel right. Dr. Petty, contact them, pettycliniclowt.com. They'll set you up to get your blood work. They'll take care of that, get the results, and be in touch at pettycliniclowt.com.
The Jeep Adventure Days closeout at Allen Samuels just got bigger and better than ever with $15,000 off a 2024 Jeep Grand Cherokee Overland Demo with a V8 Hemi. Or how about a 2023 Dodge Charger RT with $15,000 off? Or a Charger Scat Pack with $11,000 off. Ask about the hot deals on the 2024 Wagoneers and get 3.9% for 72 months. Only at Allen Samuels in Waco.
Come by. Let's be friends.
In Texas, there's pea-size hail and baseball-size hail. Guess which one hit our house? We didn't even know where to begin, but we called our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent, and he was so reassuring. He knew exactly what to do to get our house back into shape and our lives back to normal. Now, we're even more thankful for the roof over our heads.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Ghost Hydration is a fully transparent, fully loaded, full-flavored hydration drink that we've all been waiting for. Ghost is caffeine-free with electrolytes, 0 sugar, and low sodium that'll hydrate your body before, during, and after your workout. Consumer loved with authentic flavors, so grab and enjoy a Sour Patch Kids Blue Raspberry and Red Berry, along with the Kiwi Strawberry, Orange Squeeze, or Lemon Lime. Ghost Hydration can truly be used anytime. Remember, it's formulated for sports, but made for life.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
work with a bank, you should expect the best of everything. That includes face-to-face personal service and the kind of community banking care that only comes from one neighbor to another. That's exactly what you'll get from the First National Bank of Central Texas, where you will know your banker works just as hard as you do. Once again, that's the First National Bank of Central Texas. Settle for nothing less than the first. Member FDIC.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
We will have our Big 12 North pod today in the 4 o'clock hour. Chris Cartman, who covers Arizona State. We've discussed them quite a bit with Scattaboo and Dillingham. He'll be on today. Phil Bennett, he's at a charity golf tournament, will join us in the 5 o'clock hour. Paul's Top 5 at the end. We're joined by Ari Temkin. Ari, thanks for being patient. Coming on a little bit later than normal. Good to see you, my friend. Iowa State, BYU. You have Arizona State, what they're doing. Kansas State goes to Boulder in another really nice game. And then there's Tech, who's kind of just right there. What? This is going to be fun. This is going to be just all hell bent for election, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you have to start with maybe the biggest surprises in this conference, which is obviously Arizona State and BYU. Those are two teams that most people expected to finish towards the bottom of the conference. Certainly Arizona State was a team I thought would be, one of the worst teams, if not the worst team in the Big 12. And now you look, and Utah, Oklahoma State, and Kansas are three teams that many expected to be towards the top of the conference that, we're going to have to reevaluate how we feel about that. Certainly Kansas and Oklahoma State with their winless start to conference play, and Utah because, with the way that Cam Rising played, I know he's injured and probably going to miss the rest of the year, but regardless of that outcome, it was pretty obvious based on watching the game that the future was for Isaac Wilson. So, we are starting to get, I think, some tiers, a little bit of hierarchy here, which is good, overall. And I think that's what Smokey is surprising about this is, that we have these tiers and that who these teams are at the top. I mean, when Arizona State's probably a top 5 team in the conference, when BYU is definitely a top 5 team in the conference, that's a huge shock thing to the system. And so that's probably why we look at this conference the way we are after, 7 games.
Ari, if I told you I've got a 25-year-old quarterback for you, would you say yes or no?
I mean, we did talk about this last week, did we not, Paul?
Yeah. It's not working out well. My
no,
theory
you're right.
holds.
And again, I mean, there's a reason that these guys are still at this level. There's a reason for it. More times than not, they've gone on and either gone to be insurance brokers or real estate agents, or they've gone on to the National Football League, or at least tried to play in the NFL. And so, yeah, I mean, right now, especially in this conference, the returns are not great. There's probably a balance there, a middle ground. You obviously don't want the completely inexperienced quarterback, and you don't want the 25 to 26-year-old quarterback, but there's probably a balance there in the middle where you get a guy like Sorsby maybe, or a Jake Retzloff that's, experienced, but not too experienced to kind of show you their potential. With Rising, though, it's shocking considering – I wouldn't say shocking, because he hasn't played very much in the last 2 years anyways, but it's surprising given that, when he was healthy early in this year, they looked like a team that should win the Big 12 and be everything that we expected. But, it got to a point almost like at the end of Tony Romo's career where it's like any hit he takes is going to have him out for weeks on end. It's not a matter of when he can come back. It's more of as soon as he comes back, he gets hurt again because, it's a young man's game and you just can't take the hits.
Yeah, to come back and then have another injury, it's just like, man, what are we even doing here? That was brutal.
Too.
Yeah, that was brutal to watch, him trying to perform through that. Iowa State, West Virginia, a tale of two teams going in different directions here. A very entertaining game. Iowa State sitting really pretty, maybe the best team they've ever had. We'll see how they finish. And on the other end, Neil Brown's back on that hot seat in Morgantown, Ari. I feel like that's pretty strong coming out of this weekend, but that's just kind of the reaction I've seen from West Virginia fans at least, and we know how that can just be, just fandom, but how are you feeling about both those squads leaving Morgantown this weekend?
Yeah, and I get it, but they have 3 losses, and those 3 losses are to teams that are combined 18-0 right now. Yeah. brutal schedule. They lost to 6-0 Pitt, 6-0 Penn State, and now 6-0 Iowa State. So, I mean, again, tough schedule. They still just have one loss in conference play, obviously with Kansas State coming to town, huge week for them to kind of stay in this race. But I mean, I get it. I get it. Is this a disappointing game and a disappointing loss? Because, they really got, beaten pretty badly. And Iowa State, like, you can't say enough about John Haycock. I mean, they're down to their third stringers at linebacker, third and fourth stringers at safety, and yet they're still doing this. I mean, they're still dominating on defense. It's really incredible. Coming into this game, I thought West Virginia would win because, they were home, but because, on the ground, Iowa State was giving up a ton of yardage. Jaheim White, who's averaging in his career over 5 yards a carry, was less than 4 yards a carry in this game. I mean, it's unbelievable what John Haycock is able to do. Just look at where they finish scoring defense in the Big 12 every year. It's incredible. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Every year they're top 3 in scoring, and they're losing players. They're graduating players. They're losing guys to the draft. They're losing guys to injuries, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They just get new guys out there that are able to do what the other guys were able to do. They've got Cooper Ebel, a sophomore who's been phenomenal for them. Bo Goodwin stepped in as a true freshman, played really well against West Virginia. So, I mean, to me, that's what this game was all about. On the West Virginia side, I'm a big Garrett Green fan. Guy's tough. He leaves it on the field. I love what he does as a dual threat guy, but I liked what I saw from Nico Marchiol when we saw him a few games ago. And, the issue with Garrett Green is the completion percentage. I mean, he's pretty much in his career between 50 and 60%. And I think coming into the season, we kind of looked at it and we're like, well, maybe it's this or that or the other. And, again, he's right there at that 50 to 60% range. It's just not good enough. You're not completing enough percentage, high enough percentage of your passes to win at this level consistently. And so, as much as I love Garrett Green, I might look at starting Nico Marchiol to see what I have from him because he looked good in the few snaps we saw from him. But this game, Iowa State, West Virginia specifically, came down to basically the fact that West Virginia had only 8 possessions. This is what Iowa State does. They slow the game down. They slow the pace down. West Virginia had 8 total possessions. They had 2 interceptions in back-to-back that were the backbreakers, but just too many empty possessions, missed field goals, turnover on downs. You just can't have that when you only have 8 possessions of the football game because Iowa State's going to make the most of them. This is probably the best Iowa State football team we've seen since Matt Campbell's been there, and I feel like I've said that multiple times, but, I mean, we've just never seen an offense that's as explosive as this one is. And as good as Brock Purdy looks right now, like Rocco Becht is playing better and more consistent than we ever saw Brock Purdy play, which is incredible because he's one of the best NFL quarterbacks right now. So just goes to show you how good Matt Campbell is. And I mean, it's really remarkable. He's consistently redefining Iowa State football history every single year.
It is good that Iowa State is getting the national recognition inside the top 10, and they have played really, really well, as you mentioned. But BYU is 6-0 with wins against the top 25 SMU and also against top 25 Kansas State. They're 13. That's, beggars can't be choosy. Where do you think they should be? Who should be ranked higher, in your opinion, Iowa State or BYU?
Oh, it's a joke. And not even just between Iowa State and BYU, but, I mean, look at Clemson's wins. Are you kidding me? Like, what are we doing here? What is Clemson? Again, it's the same conversation we had last week. Like, is this just recruiting rankings? Yeah. Clemson's wins. BYU has 2 wins against current top 25 teams, SMU and K-State.
Yep.
Clemson has 0 and got smoked by the only team in the top 25 they played. Why are they a top 10 team? It makes no sense to me. What it says, Smokey, is the SEC and the Big Ten are better than the Big 12. That's what the rankings tell me. That one-loss teams, Tennessee, Clemson, and obviously that Clemson's not is an ACC team, but just look at the way that the layout of the AP top 10 is. BYU and Iowa State are 100% top 10 teams based on the fact that they're undefeated in the Big 12, based on what they've done and their resumes. I mean, it's insane. Ohio State has the same win, has the same best win as Iowa State does. They both beat Iowa. Now, granted, Ohio State did it by many more points than Iowa State did, but look at the wins that Ohio State has opposite that. Western Michigan. So, like, even Ohio State doesn't have as good of a resume as Iowa State does. But again, it's based on recruiting rankings and everything else. And preseason preseason perceptions and expectations. BYU and Iowa State have won 6 consecutive football games. They've beaten good teams to do it. Iowa State has wins over Iowa and West Virginia. And again, West Virginia has 3 losses to 3 teams that are 18-0 right now. So even if they don't want to put Iowa State that high, you should put BYU that high, considering wins over SMU and Kansas State, which are better than a lot of other top 25 teams currently. Tennessee is on that. Again, Tennessee is on that list. What? It says that the SEC and the Big Ten are better based on the perception of those 2 leagues. And it's a perception issue that the Big 12 has, guys.
What do you think most AP top 25 voters grind about? How high can I put a Big 12 team? Or my God, Alabama can't be outside the top 10. That's just not allowed.
Yeah, I mean that's part of it, right? I mean,
I think that's a legitimate conversation that a lot of them have. Well, it's Alabama, or it's
or it's Ohio State, or it's Georgia. 100%. I mean, perception is reality in college athletics. That's why we have to yell and bellyache about the AP Top 25, because it's not just like a meaningless exercise. It is absolutely a perception thing that plays into the teams that get into the playoff. You know, the league, the Big 12 is viewed as a league of parity. And it's like, how is it not viewed as a league that's top heavy? The SEC has 3 teams that are undefeated right now in conference play. So does the Big 12. So I don't really understand what the difference is between these 2 leagues. At this point, the Big 12 isn't as parity driven as we think it is. It's probably a lot more top heavy than we think it is. It's just not the teams that we expected it to be. Utah's not that good. So all of a sudden the league's not good. Well, what are you talking about? I mean, everybody thinks SMU is good, and BYU beat the tar out of them, held them out of the end zone. It's one of the best offenses in college football, and held them without a touchdown. You know, that Kansas State is one of the most explosive offenses on the ground, and BYU beat them. And you know, so yeah, I mean, 100%. You know, today I called the AP the Associated P brains, because it really is like, just remove your own biases from the situation. Look at these teams, look at their resumes, and just stop plotting down teams down in certain numbers, because, well, Tennessee's in the SEC. Certainly they've got to be a top 15 team. And, you know, an Ole Miss, who has 2 losses now, is somehow still a top 25 team. Michigan is 4-2 and has not looked good at all. How is Michigan in the top 25? Other than the fact that they're Michigan, and if they're not in the top 25, then the rest of the Big 10 wins don't look good by comparison. I mean, it really is a way to prop up the other programs in these conferences, because then you're still beating a top 25 team. Michigan is are you kidding me? There's 15, there's 8 teams in the Big 12 that have better resumes than Michigan to be a top 25 team. Michigan at 24? What?
Yeah, Nebraska's ranked behind Michigan too, and they have a better record than Michigan does. Vanderbilt just beat Alabama, ranked behind Michigan, right? So
and Kentucky.
It's all ridiculous. Part of this, and I hear this a lot, or you see it, and like if you look at a team's schedule, like when you were mentioning Clemson's wins, right? And then I looked at Michigan's wins, or I looked at Tennessee's, you know, so Tennessee beat Oklahoma, who when they played Oklahoma was ranked 15th. And that gets played into a lot of, well, they were ranked 15 when they beat them. Yeah, but like, you know, this is not the whole thing here. They beat them in week 4 when they hadn't played anybody yet. Like doesn't matter what they were when you beat them. It matters what they are as a whole. So again, these rankings are an exercise in a waste of time. Just tell us at the end of the season.
Right. But what sucks is they're not, because they do play into the perceptions. They play. I mean, the committee might say they don't take the AP top 25 into account, but they absolutely do. And hopefully they'll prove me wrong when they rank these teams, but it very much seems to play into it. And, you know, with BYU, it's as if they just started too low. But like, how is Texas Tech not ranked? How is Arizona State not ranked? You know, it's like suddenly they beat a bad Utah team when 2 weeks ago Utah was considered a good team. So it's back to what you're talking about, Paul, where like we can play these mental gymnastics here all we want and figure out ways to make some of these top 10 or top 15 or top 25 teams look a lot better. I mean, Florida State was once, as you know, Paul, ranked very highly. So is that win for Clemson that much better, since Florida State was at one point ranked in the top 10? Like it is very much the gymnastics that we do for this meaningless list, but it isn't meaningless. And that's the issue here, is it is a perception issue. And I don't know how it gets fixed. We could say, well, the Big 12 has to have success in the playoff, but that already happened. You know, TCU won the first playoff game for the conference, and they got boat raced by Georgia. So it's almost as if it didn't count. So I'm not even sure what the fix is for the perception, because it just seems like the SEC and the Big Ten just continue to get, you know, from a perception standpoint, higher and higher. And yet the reality of the situation is a lot different than that, especially the SEC. Like, this isn't Nick Saban patrolling the sidelines for Alabama anymore. So like, what Alabama has been is not what Alabama currently is. And like, what we've seen them this year is they're not, I mean, great win against Georgia. They have not looked good since then. And are they going to slip up again? And will we finally recalibrate based on how many losses they had, or will we hear just how good the SEC is? The SEC will never be talked about as being a league of parity, but that's kind of what it looks like it is right now, where like, how does Kentucky beat Ole Miss and then lose to Vanderbilt, right? But that's sort of what a league of parity does. But we're going to be led to believe that it's not a league of parity, that it's just that good, as opposed to the Big 12, which is a league of parity, which just means that everybody's mid. It doesn't make any sense.
In terms of eyeballs on the Big 12 and some of that perception, there were definitely a lot of eyes on Boulder on Saturday night. What were your thoughts on what was a very entertaining game and a huge win for K-State, and one where hopefully Colorado can be healthy coming out of this one?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Shedeur Sanders, an absolute stud. The guy just gets beaten to a pulp every week, it seems like, and he just keeps getting up and keeps firing. And then not to mention the fact that they didn't have Travis Hunter or Jimmy Horn, through the majority of this game. You could say, well, look, they've got a bunch of weapons, and they do. I mean, Will Shepard's good. Miller's good. There's no doubt they've got a lot of weapons, but you're going to tell me that taking Travis Hunter out is not going to impact, your play at all? Like, it's crazy. And the fact that they had a comeback, they outscored K-State in the second half 21-3 without Travis Hunter. And while Shedeur Sanders was picking himself up, peeling himself up off the ground, the dude is a maniac. I mean, football at its core, guys, is a sport that tests your will to continue to get up. How much pain are you willing to take on before you're not willing to get up? And Shedeur Sanders is not saying uncle, man. The dude is just always getting up. This was a great football game between two really good teams. You could tell K-State felt like, they were the underdog, and that everybody was talking about how good Colorado was. We saw, the Dion dance after Avery Johnson scored. And yeah, I mean, this one came down to the second half, where Colorado hits that touchdown to go ahead, and then K-State scored 3 plays later, and then K-State's defense got the stop. That's pretty much it. But this thing came down to the fact that Shedeur Sanders basically had to do it all himself once again. They're so compromised on their offensive line, as we continue to see. I mean, I can't remember how many sacks he took in this game, but there's countless other pressures and times that he was hit. And then the running game. I mean, once again, when Colorado is getting its running game going, they're really tough to beat. But unfortunately, in this game, it was just all about Shedeur having to throw the football because they cannot get their running game going. And this was the first game where Colorado gave up a 100-yard rusher. Coming into this game, they had not given up a 100-yard rusher or a 100-yard receiver, and DJ Giddens had that in a half. DJ Giddens is an absolute beast. The dude is a truck. So, I mean, the difference here in this game was the running game for K-State was rolling. DJ Giddens eclipsed 100 yards in the first half of that game. And then, yeah, K-State, when they needed the stop, they got it. They got the stop down the stretch of this game. And, certainly it's hard to overlook the importance and the impact that not having Travis Hunter and Jimmy Horde had on this offense overall.
Who would you rather do the bull in the ring? Who's on the other side? Taj Brooks, Giddens, or Scattaboo?
Whew. The thing with Giddens is his power too. Like, he's not just the power, the speed too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Scattaboo is just like, and we had him on the show last week, and he's awesome. He is just, you're not going to stop him on 4th and 1. Like, it's just not going to happen. You can meet him in the hole one-on-one, and it's just not going to happen. So, like, that's the ultimate power guy. DJ Giddens to me is power and speed, and Brooks is kind of a little bit of both, I would say. So I guess I'd probably go Brooks, even though I'd regret that one too, probably.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it. Paul, anything else for Ari?
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, what do you think Colorado looks like in the future when all these guys are gone? We're going to get a little preview of that with no Hunter and no Horn probably in the next week at least, you would think.
Well, yeah, they're in big trouble at the quarterback position because of what we've just said about Shedeur. I mean, say what you will about him and the arrogance and however he carries himself, whatever. Again, the dude is just taking a beating every week, getting up, still firing. And yeah, the fact that he did that without these guys speaks even higher to him. So, I mean, more than anything, the loss of Shedeur Sanders is going to plague Colorado moving forward, because you got to fix a lot, but Shedeur Sanders fixes a lot himself, right? I mean, Shedeur kind of makes it so your offensive line doesn't totally matter. And that obviously, when you get a new quarterback, that's going to matter in a big way. So yeah, tons of losses with Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders. And I'm not sure which one's the bigger one for Colorado as a program.
Tomorrow, 7 to 10 in the morning, right? Central Time?
That's right. Check it out. Make sure to download the TuneIn app if you have not yet already. Make sure to favorite the Big 12 Radio. And, keep it right here with 365 Sports and Big 12 Radio on TuneIn, because we're bringing you coast to coast across the Big 12, which is one of the best conferences in America right now.
Ari, thank you for your time, buddy. 7 to 10 with James Westling, Big 12 Radio. Ari Temkin with us on 365 Sports. Super chats from Katie Rader and also from Kim Coulter, coming off the interview with Joey McGuire. And special thanks to one of our original sponsors when we first launched the show. He wanted to be a part of the Ground Up. David Willis Sr. from Willis Law Firm in Houston sent us a big box of Tiff Treats cookies. I snuck in here before I was on my way out of town and grabbed a handful of them and then dropped off a couple of other things we needed in the studio. They're just around the corner. So thanks to David Willis Sr. for that nice gift on Friday. Do you have a picture of the deer blind? So he has a deer blind. Here is the deer blind. I'm not sure. Yes. Do you know? Okay, that's very much camouflage, right? Do you know where all of that around the deer, what is that? What is the product?
Is it like ghillie? Is that what they call it? Like a ghillie suit?
Well, I mean, like you're talking about, like, is it plastic or whatever?
Yeah.
It is apparently, from what David told me, a bunch of the old turf at Floyd Casey Stadium.
All right. Well,
which, of course, has been gone for 10 years since back in 2013, over 10 years now. So there we are with that. It looked like some kind of a Halloween outfit.
I thought you were going to say it was the old tarp.
No, it's part. No. Oh, whoa.
Yeah, I brought it back.
I thought, what color was that tarp? It was black, though, wasn't it?
Black.
Yeah, okay. All right, we're not done. We will look at the Big 12 North, Iowa State, Kansas State, obviously also KU and West Virginia. We also have some more notes in college football that we will get to, and we have Phil Bennett coming up a little bit later on at 5, and Chris Cartman on the Sun Devils, and what a run they've had so far with that huge win against Utah, who a lot of the fans thought was going to run the Big 12. It happens. This conference is crazy, man. It's fun to watch. You never know. This is 365 Sports. The Baylor Club inside McLean Stadium. They don't have a home game until the end of the month against Oklahoma State. So it will be open. It'll be at the tailgate. They have the HEB tailgate for the Baylor Club. Mike Mosel's the general manager. Got to know him very quickly when he took over the Baylor Club and when they launched 10 years ago. They'll have a huge anniversary celebration sometime in the spring. They also have great food. I mean, really good food. Chefs that know the cuisine, know how to maybe just tantalize your taste buds a little bit. They had a big tasting recently. The views are wonderful. You can see the new basketball arena, the Foster Pavilion out one window, and you could also see inside McLean Stadium with a lot of the sights that you get when you're inside the Baylor Club. If you want to just have a drink and relax and enjoy whatever food you order, a buffet, they have it. If you also want to go there because you have a special event to host, whether it's a wedding or a rehearsal dinner, or even if it's like we have, the Academic All-Stars honoring senior student athletes every year in May, plenty of room for that. The serving and the customer service is fantastic. The food is great. The Baylor Club, inside McLean Stadium off I-35 in the Brazos River in Waco.
Hi, I'm Mark Stewart with Bird Colgan Ford. It's that time of year, it's football season. Bird Colgan Ford is a proud supporter of the best high school football right here in Central Texas. BK Ford is proud to sell the #1 selling truck in Texas, the F-Series truck, 47 years in a row. Come see the largest showroom in Texas and experience better at Bird Colgan Ford.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
It's football
tailgate season. If you want product for the grill or smoker, charcoal, seasonings, marinades, sauces, Waco Custom Marketplace is your home to help prep, cook, and enjoy your food. Tailgate must-lay brisket, tri-tip, fresh-made burgers, sausage, chicken wings, and if you want steaks, call in your order and pick them up. Bacon wrap fillets or any kind of ribeyes. USDA Select, Choice, and Prime that melt in your mouth. House-made sausage and jerky. Also, Waco Custom Marketplace, a one-stop shop for tailgating, barbecue cook-offs, and family get-togethers, fundraisers with fair prices to you, the customer. A bakery with fresh baked bread and kolaches. There's cold beer, wine, and soft drinks. Serving Waco restaurants and families since 1940. A cut above the rest. Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday at 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
Couple of Big 12 nuggets, and then we will focus on the Big 12 North pod, as we broke it into 4 teams, 4 different pods every single day, Monday through Thursday. The Big 12 South, the Big 12 North Bowlesby pod, which is the schools that came in following the Texas and Oklahoma discussion and exit, or at least the story, and then also the 4 corners. Arizona State and Texas Tech are the only programs in the country with 4 wins in what are one-score games this season. The conference accounts for 5 of the top 10 Power 4 schools in rushing yards per game. This has become what was a throw it all around the neighborhood to UCF being #1 in the country, K-State 3rd, Kansas 6th, Arizona State 7th, and West Virginia 8th. 5 of the top 8 rushing teams in the country are from the Big 12. Oh, my goodness, how the identity has changed.
Yeah, it's not doing UCF any good right now.
No, it's
They've lost
not.
three games in a row with that
Not
tough
doing Kansas
rush.
any favors either.
Nope. Yeah.
No, that's great. That's a good point. You got to, and West Virginia has a pretty good running game, but they're also kind of just flattened out.
But look, balance. That's the key. Balance. The best offenses are balanced.
3 of the top 5 rushers nationally come from the Big 12. Taj Brooks, DJ Giddens, Cam Skedaboo. Also involved R.J. Harvey and Micah Bernard, who played really well. If Utah would have won that game, he would have been a big reason for that. So they've got the dudes doing all of that right now. All right, so here we go with the Big 12 North Pod. Look at 4 schools, and let's start, to me, we'll start with Iowa State, the win at West Virginia, the Cyclones inside the top 10, Matt Campbell and company unbeaten.
They're really damn good. They're just really, really good. I expected a little bit more juice out of West Virginia in that game because I thought that maybe this was a kind of a rougher matchup for Iowa State. And it never felt at any point that Iowa State wasn't in control of that game on the road. And, you know, they got huge plays in the passing game. They got plays in again, I just said it, balance. They have balance all over the field. They don't beat themselves. All of those things. Rocco Beck gets better and better every single week. So everything's coming up roses so far for Iowa State this season. And, you know, this is, I think, you know, I know that there was, you know, Brock Purdy and Breece Hall and guys like that, but this might be the most complete team Matt Campbell has had since he's been there. And early on the triple option, Garrett and I were talking about it, and I kind of compare what Matt Campbell does to Frank Beamer, where if you build the little things well all the time, if you're going to always be good up front and you're always going to have, you know, good linebackers who can stop the run, and you've got, you know, efficiency built into what you do, that when you get the skill players like they have now, like Noel and Higgins on the outside, and you get the running backs that they have, and you have a quarterback like Rocco Becht, everything else is so efficient that all of a sudden you're really good and people go, where did this come from? Well, like Virginia Tech and Michael Vick. Virginia Tech was always really good, and they're always really consistent, but when they got Michael Vick, all of a sudden it's like, holy crap, what are we going to do? Because they don't make mistakes already. They block all these kicks and all this other stuff, and now they've got Superman out there at quarterback. Now, is Rocco Becht Michael Vick? No, but he's really, really good right now, and he's playing so great that when those things happen, it all comes together. It makes for a really hard team to beat.
Yeah, I think, first of all, it was a really cool story with Rocco Becht's father being inducted in the West Virginia Hall of Fame. His parents, both Mountaineers and ex-athletes. It's pretty cool that was all able to come together on Saturday. And then on top of that, for his family and for the Iowa State family to be able to walk out of Morgantown with a win and move on to 6-0 is just absolutely massive. And they are a really good team. That was a close game, even though it did feel kind of like Iowa State was in control. It still was a relatively close game, and I know Neil Brown, pointed out a couple things about, well, if this doesn't go this way or that doesn't go this way, particularly calling one of those interceptions that went against or didn't go West Virginia's way, things like that could have made this game a little bit closer. But then again, like on that side, it just kind of feels like you're making excuses. So on the West Virginia side, certainly a game where you felt like you maybe could have pulled that one out. But I think on the Iowa State side, you were pretty confident throughout. And, yeah, Beck's playing pretty well. For a team that hasn't really generated much of a consistent running game this year, that was huge to see Carson Hansen have the type of day that he did. They still didn't rush for a ton of yards per se. It's just going to be interesting to see how they do that, and if it's just more of Beck being able to air it out and then, obviously playing really good defense. But they're a solid team. Wouldn't be surprised if this is Matt Campbell's best team ever. I mean, they're certainly trending in that way. They've got the quarterback. They've got the receivers. They've got the tight ends. They've got the defense and, very few question marks. So, that was impressive because every game in this league is a toss-up for the most part, but especially when you go out on the road and especially when you're playing a team that's pretty good in West Virginia. Like, they're not a bad team. So, to take all those things into account and then go out there and get a win was massive, and that's why they're in the top 10 now. So, yeah, they're in a good spot, and they're my number one team in my mojo rankings for the Big 12 as a whole, just a little bit above BYU.
Did you get permission from Odessa Permian to use Mojo?
No, I just took it.
No, that's good. Yeah. That's fine. I don't think it was trademarked.
No, look, we're owed it because you and I spent 12 hours there.
We did, and scariest day of my life.
Well, mine don't, power rankings are what, like just who would win, take all the records and everything out of consideration. So, like, the SEC would have like 5 of the top 5, in power rankings. That must be how the AP votes, is they do power rankings. But
who would win? Yes.
Mojo rankings take into account other things like, how do people feel about your current trajectory and your coach? Is he on the hot seat? Is, is your recruiting going well? Is there excitement outside of the field of play? Like, you've got facilities being built up. So, like, I try to take into account the universal health of a program. Winning weighs a lot, but there's also other things. And for Iowa State right now, everything's going really well. So, they're right there at the top.
All right, let's discuss K-State coming off their win against Colorado. They've righted the ship after a loss on the road when BYU beat them up 38-9. They beat Colorado.
Should mention, looking forward, well, we look back, we need to look forward. They're playing UCF this weekend, and that's a team that you feel like Iowa State should be able to beat, especially in Ames. So 7-0 is looking like a real possibility, especially you talk about hot seats. I know it's not anything realistic right now, but there is a segment of UCF fans that are bringing up the word Scott Frost. So that's kind of how it's going in Orlando for some people right now. They're pining for the days of the mythical national championship and Scott Frost because it's not going well in O-Town. They're obviously dealing with a lot, but that should be another win for Iowa State based on everything that we've seen thus far. You'd have to feel pretty confident about that. And then what would be a major showdown maybe in a couple weeks against Texas Tech. So we'll have to wait till we get there. But, yeah, they should handle UCF, I would think, this weekend.
The amount of teams that have what you think are legitimate chances of playing in Arlington has been squeezed just a little bit. And there's a couple of teams that have fallen by the wayside, and West Virginia's one, UCF is one. Utah is very close to that because of what's happening with them. Now, let's get to Kansas State. Beat Colorado. They beat Oklahoma State before that after losing, getting thumped by BYU. They play at West Virginia. They're 3-3, by the way, but we'll discuss West Virginia in a minute with Neil Brown. Here's a stat for you. Kansas State held Colorado to minus 29 yards rushing. It was the fewest yards rushing allowed by an FBS team this year and marked the fewest allowed in a Big 12 game since 2006. Now, a lot of that was sacks. There were 6 sacks. Shedeur had minus 50 yards. But Hayden had 10 carries for 21 yards, and combined with the 2 running backs, 10 carries, 21 yards. The longest run was Shedeur scrambling for 13.
Yeah, the longest run.
The longest run was
the
13.
longest run for the other 2 running backs was 3 and 4 yards.
Yep.
That's the thing that they have to do to get to the next level, and that's the thing that's preventing the team with, like Joey McGuire said, maybe the best like what he believes is the best quarterback in the country, from really competing for the Big 12 title down the stretch, because I have a feeling they'll lose another game or 2 because of just that reason, that they're out of balance. Again, we come back to it. I have a theme today, balance. And they're out of it. And K-State threw them out of it. The other question I had about K-State was, if it came down to it, could Avery Johnson make plays in the passing game to get them to a win? Well, yes, did that on Saturday night, and then the defense came up big with 2.5 minutes left in the game, got to stop and moved on from it. So I just, again, continue to be thoroughly impressed with Chris Cartman and the way they handled their business at Kansas State. They're one of the teams to get thumped by BYU, so now it's not really an elite club of one like they were. Everybody's kind of getting thumped by BYU, and BYU's really good, but I fully expect them to stay in this race to the very end.
Well, I think BYU actually helped them win this game because Avery Johnson got his taste of hell on the road and was better for it in this game, where it was still a raucous crowd and still big pressure, but he'd already faced it a couple weeks ago, and he saw the ugly side of it, and I think he's a better player as a result of that experience, and now he's an even better player as a result of the experience in Colorado, and that young man's going to be a headache for a lot of teams the remainder of the way and throughout the rest of his career as well, and it helps to have some stud running backs and guys all across that team stepping up and making big plays. I mean, that game, that 4th and 6 that Cartman decides to go for it, I mean, it's pretty logical when you think about it. Like, you kick a field goal there and you're up, 6 points, so Colorado can go down and win the game, and sure enough, Colorado would go down and score a touchdown right after that. But, yeah, a field goal did no good there. Like, I know at the time it was like, oh, what do you do? But that seems like it was a pretty easy decision in hindsight. Was field goal just makes it a 6-point game. You got to score a touchdown to put this bad boy away. They didn't get it, obviously, because Avery Johnson gets intercepted. But as Cartman said, that maybe actually turned out to be a good thing because it didn't waste any more time off the clock. So you got the ball back after Colorado scores quick and takes the lead, and you've got a little bit of extra time to play with, and that's when Avery Johnson has the moment of probably his career up to this point in so many ways, with the big touchdown drive to go and win the game, and then obviously you get the stop on Colorado. So that was just an interesting sequence of events because, I mean, it makes sense, but some coaches might have kicked the field goal, because a field goal otherwise ties it up, and so you're like, no, we'll at least go up 6, and if they score, they score, but I think Cartman knew they were going to score. Shedeur was hot. And we heard Joey talking about Shedeur. This is now the 4th or 5th head coach that I've heard who've played Shedeur this year to talk about how great he is. Joey just said that. Cartman said the same thing. He thinks he's, I think, the best quarterback in America, or one of the best quarterbacks in America. So they needed something from their own guy, and Avery Johnson delivered in the biggest of moments, and then the defense was able to finish it out. But, yeah, incredible win for K-State. And that's got to feel really good. That BYU game looks more of just like an outlier and just a circumstance type thing as much as anything else. And I'm sure they'd love to get their hands on BYU in Arlington, if at all possible. I think that'd be a great game. But this was a big one for K-State.
He did say Shedeur's the best. I think he's the best quarterback in America.
Okay, that's 2 coaches. I'll just say this, and I know we're not even on Colorado's pod, but is there a quarterback, take the top ones in your mind, the Carson Becks, the Quinn Ewers, those guys of the world. if you put Shedeur in their spot, do you think anything changes? Like, they're still probably.
I think George would be better.
Yeah, George
in my
would be.
opinion.
Yeah, George would be better. You know, like Texas would still be really good. I think he would add in maybe a little bit of an element that Quinn doesn't have. But I really like Quinn Ewers. The other day was kind of.
They also have the other big differences are they've got a great O-line, a great run game. Great.
But my point being is that like he's doing all this without all those things.
Yeah.
And to me, that's why I can't wait to see him in the NFL, especially if he goes to a team that, knows their ass from a hole in the ground about building a team and has people around him, because it could be super special.
All right, so there we are. We've hit with what's happening with Iowa State as they just keep on grinding people into dust.
And for K-State, it's now a trip to Morgantown.
Yes.
So
I mentioned that earlier, but yeah, that's who they have next.
They got a trip to Morgantown on Saturday night, so we know where West Virginia's kind of feeling in the dumps right now, and K-State's riding off that high of the win over Colorado. So big back-to-back road trips for the Wildcats, but you would think that the same things we're talking about serve Avery Johnson well going into Morgantown. And the ears limping into this one a little bit, although I'm sure it'll still be a great crowd. But that's a dangerous game for K-State that you just got to be mindful of in this league where anything is possible week to week.
The other part of the Big 12 North pod includes, let's go ahead and do the Mountaineers. We've discussed them quite a bit. With the loss to Iowa State. They're 3-3, folks. They were 9-4 last year. They were one of the surprise teams. Now they're about to play Kansas State, but they're back again home, back-to-back home games in Morgantown. What's the heat factor with Neil Brown and the Mountaineers?
I think, like, in a general sense, Ren Baker's probably not firing him based on what we've seen. I think Ari brought up a very good stat as far as the teams they've lost to are all unbeaten, all of them. Penn State just went and got the big win over USC. Pitt found a way again, and Iowa State's obviously 6-0. So you're 3-3. Your three losses are to teams who are like 18-0 right now. So does that change things a little bit? I think it should put things in a little bit more perspective, but I also know that's not the point. The point is that West Virginia fans are sick and tired of showing up for big games and walking away disappointed. Does that sound familiar to anybody? It sounds like around here, where every big game, you're on the losing side of it. Every big home game you get riled up for, you're on the losing side of it. And it's been the climb. And I think fans are ready to jump off at this point and tumble back down and start over with somebody new. Now, that might just be the loud segment on Twitter or any of your other various social media platforms that maybe you peruse. But I do think there is a growing sentiment of that, of like, yeah, okay, they're losing close games, but they're still losing. Like, that's the point, is they're losing games, and games that at some point you got to jump up and win. And they view this as a prime opportunity against Iowa State this past weekend and walked away feeling much like they've walked away so many other times of, hey, Iowa State's great, but it's not about Iowa State. It's about us. Like, we don't win these games. And I felt like going into this one, it was going to revolve around for West Virginia how good Garrett Green was, and I don't think he was very good. They were not able to run the ball nearly as effectively as they had the week prior, although it was still respectable, especially given how good Iowa State is defensively. But, yeah, I just don't think Garrett Green was very good. I know that Brown said, one of those interceptions, there should have been a penalty called, and, you can – but, like, when he talks now – it's always about the officiating, or it's about like this, or it's just kind of like this point.
He was hot, no question.
No, he was very mad after that game, but it's also kind of like the big game thing of like, all right, we get it, but we just don't care anymore. Like, change it. Like, it doesn't matter if you have a legit argument about the pass interference call that should or should not have been made. Win anyways. Like, find a way to win, and that's what they're not doing, and I think their fans are just, or at least a good segment of them are pretty – just fed up with the status quo and the climb that seemingly is never ending.
S. Michael DeHart, West Virginia fan. I think Brown is okay, but I'm pissed at him.
Well, yeah, that's it. Like, they're fine, right? Overall, like they have good players. They're a pretty good team. But when you've seen this year, whenever they played a team that Pitt, they should have won that game, but Pitt's undefeated right now, right? Pitt hasn't lost yet. Pitt's found a way to win games. Penn State finds a way to win games. They have not gotten up and gotten that big W that nobody thought they were going to get yet. And, that's where they keep hitting the wall. And so, you're going to lose to Iowa State. Okay, well, You're going to lose to Pitt. You're going to lose to, their teams are 18-0, like Ari said, that they've lost to, but you got to start getting those. Otherwise, you're not getting any better. You're just spinning your wheels.
Well, the other thing about it, too, is like you get a couple wins in a row, granted against maybe two of the worst teams in the Big 12, but you go to Stillwater, that's a big deal. And then you get a little bit of momentum, it's another loss. So it's just herky-jerk. It's like you climbed 2 steps, and then you fell down 2 steps. And look, you might turn around and go beat K-State, but then guess what? You'll probably go to Arizona and lose. Like, that's just kind of how it feels watching them, that the climb never continues climbing. It always inevitably has like a rock come tumbling down and setting you back to where you felt like you were a couple of weeks prior. So I think there's some sort of just what's the right word? Just I can't picture the right word, but there's just a growing frustration with just kind of spinning your wheels and not ever getting that big win and then building off that and turning it into more and more of those types of wins.
It blew the lead against Pittsburgh, right? This never where Penn State beat them up, even after the delay came back and beat them up again, and now the loss there at home to Iowa State, who just methodically hits you in the shin with a hammer, then in the back of your head, and then your shoulder blade. We have one more team to get to. We have to get to our next guest. Go ahead, Craig.
Well, West Virginia hosts K-State, so back-to-back home games. If they don't win this one, then I think that, that's going to be bad news for Neil Brown. Not like he'll get fired the next day, but I just think that that's going to be kind of inexcusable for some portions of the West Virginia fan base if they didn't jump off the bandwagon after Saturday night.
Kansas. They a handful of teams had an off week. KU, of course, is playing Houston at home. And all of a sudden, I saw Joseph Duarte, who covers Houston for the Chronicle in Houston. He man, this end-of-the-year schedule initially looked really, really good and hard. And now all of a sudden, some of those teams that we thought were up or down or whatever. And Houston, of course, is still feeling pretty good after what they did to win the game they had a couple of weeks ago. Paul.
Well, based on the temperature in my house, basketball season starts in 3 weeks. But Houston's their best shot to win for the next month, because after that, on the road against Kansas State, then Iowa State, then BYU, then Colorado, all teams wildly more successful than Kansas has been this year. And then they end the regular season, or probably the season, because if they lose 2 more games, they're not going to a bowl game. So at Baylor on November 30th. So they've got to put together a game that they can finish, because they've led in most every game this year, and then find ways to lose them at the end. And that was the case at Illinois, UNLV, West Virginia, not necessarily TCU, but that one was 38-27, and same with Arizona State. They've got to finish a game, and until they do that, they're going to keep doing this. And I just have a feeling as they hit the back half of their schedule here, they're not going to be in that position much anymore, where it's going to be right there at the end, and they have that. They're not going to have these one-possession games anymore, because they're simply just not that good.
If they don't beat Houston at home, then they're not going to a bowl game.
Yeah.
Bottom line. I mean, because you play K-State, Iowa State, and BYU the next 3 games after that.
And then Colorado.
Yeah, and in Colorado. Yeah. So, but just mention, that's 3 top 20 teams that you've got. 2 of those on the road in K-State and BYU following this Houston game. So you've had 2 weeks to prepare for arguably the worst team in the league, not named you or Baylor at this point. And I think that should be sufficient enough to get over the hump of these close losses. But they're in a slide, and Houston comes at the right time, and they're at home. There's really no excuses to not win this game. And I don't know what Houston's health status is at quarterback and all that, but even if everybody's ready to go, Kansas should still be pretty heavily favored in this game, and will be and are. And, if they don't walk out of this weekend with a win, and that's 6 straight losses, and I think Jeff Grimes is getting the axe on Monday or Sunday. I think you're going to have to do something. You're going to have to do something. You're not firing Leipold, obviously. He's not on any kind of a hot seat, but fans are going to need some blood.
Didn't he get an extension in the offseason?
Yeah, I mean, he's fine.
Everyone does when they have
but the coordinators aren't. Yeah. So we've well documented the change at OC, and that ended up being 10 times worse than a lot of the optimistic Kansas fans thought. But, you got to beat Houston this weekend, or or heads are rolling.
All right, so that's the Big 12 North pod. Those are the four, a part of the original. Of course, Kansas, Kansas State, Iowa State, and also West Virginia. Well, they came in when TCU added back in 2000, 11 or 12. All right, we got Chris. We are joined by Chris Cartman. He covers Arizona State, and what a fun story they have been. The huge win on Friday. Chris, great to see you, man. Great to have you on the video link. What's it like right now in Tempe, Arizona?
People are excited. This has been a long time coming, really. The back-to-back 3-9 seasons, the worst 2-year stretch in ASU football history, all the way to fans storming the field after a win against number 16 Utah. Of course, the Utes were not their typical high-caliber functioning offense. Cam Rising didn't look healthy. 3 interceptions. Seems like Kyle Whittingham is going to shut him down, but you still have to make the plays when you get the opportunity. Caleb McCullough, defensive player of the week in the Big 12, 2 interceptions, 12 tackles, wasn't even supposed to start in the game. Keyshawn Elliott was suspended for the first half for targeting. And then Cam Scadaboo, I think everybody kind of in America following college football is aware of this guy at this point. He's over 1,000 yards from scrimmage in 6 games. 3 times he's been offensive player of the week in the Big 12 out of 6 games. That's a pretty great way to introduce yourself to a new conference. So the Sun Devils are feeling pretty good about themselves right now.
Chris, last year before the season started, the team had the rug pulled out from under them and said, well, you're not going to a bowl game no matter what happens this year. We're going to do this suspension, whether it means like it matters or not to this crew. And you could feel it, from the outside, like there was a bubble popped about how the season was going to end. Obviously, it was year 1 of Kenny Dillingham. I just see, not like he's coaching angry, but they're coaching confident, and he's coaching like he has something to prove. And that makes them pretty scary because he's a young coach that people maybe don't know a lot about yet, but he's already accomplished a lot. Do you feel that when you see them play right now?
Well, he speaks from an educated perspective, right? Because he was with Dan Lanning at Oregon. Lanning, of course, coached at the SEC and major college, the height of major college football. Before that, he was under Mike Norvell at Florida State. So there's a educated sort of a vantage point that I think comes across with him, coupled with his own personal work ethic and his ability to connect with players is quite good. In fact, I would say that his whole mantra of having more fun, working harder than we ever have before is starting to really take hold in Tempe. Like that's rubbed off on a lot of players. They see the success that comes from that sort of an attitude. They've won close games. 4 of their wins have been 7-8 point differentials at most. So basically 1-score games, and they've finished drives and had big moments in the fourth quarter. So they're starting to believe in themselves. And then today he actually had Steve Nash, the 2-time NBA MVP, come in and talk to the guys about remaining humble. And the message was pretty clear, like you haven't actually accomplished anything yet. So yeah, they're 5-1. They got to go on the road and play Cincinnati. Then they got tough games on the schedule after that, including on the road, Oklahoma State, Kansas State. So they're ahead of schedule for sure in his second year after winning only 3 games last year. And the trend line is quite good, but you don't want to underachieve now that you've set yourself up really well for the second half of the schedule.
Chris, I follow a lot of the Texas high school guys very closely. So Jordan Tyson, a guy who is on my radar. I know he had the injury a couple years back when in Colorado, and then now this year seems to be blossoming. Now, how much of a breath of fresh air and big option has he been for this offense that revolves around the run game but needs to pop the pass, and he's been able to get that going for them a little bit?
Yeah, that was a big deal against Utah because they crowd the line of scrimmage so well that they kind of make you have some success on early downs, passing the ball to soften up their run defense. So Jordan Tyson caught a first quarter touchdown. He's far and away the top targeted guy on the team. You guys will remember at the end of the 2022 season, November, he suffered a catastrophic knee injury. I think 3 ligaments torn, including his ACL. And that prevented him from being anything close to 100% for all of last season. Really, I didn't feel like until this spring he was all the way back. Now he's showing what he can do. I think he's going to be an NFL draft pick down the line, and far and away that they're their top target. They actually need to get a little bit more diversity with their receivers. That's one of the areas that's not quite as good as I anticipated before the season.
Chris, the post interview with Dillingham after the win was an all-timer. In fact, I think he probably is old, about the same age as most of those students that were all around him, it seems like, because he's so young. But how that was legendary for anyone who didn't see it, that they're trying to do the interview, they're doing the interview, you could see, and then he just finally just says, hey, let's just morphed into the crowd of students. I loved it.
Yeah, he just totally absorbed into the students. There's a famous Todd Graham gif where he's jumping up and down with the student section. And that was the first college coach that Dillingham worked for when he was at GA 10 years ago, maybe 11 years ago, in 2014, 2015 timeframe. And Dillingham just sort of out Graham on the GIF there. He won the internet for the day for sure. But yeah, he's 34, 4 years younger than any other Power 4 head coach, second youngest FBS coach in the country. So he relates really well to his players. They have fun with him. You could see like the spirit and the buy-in that exists. And this ASU hasn't really had a vibe that felt like this in quite a long time. It didn't exist at any point in time during the Herm Edwards era. They had talented teams at the beginning of his tenure. They, of course, squandered it, NCAA violations. Everybody knows about those things. But just the way that this feels, I would say you got to go back more than a decade to have something that's similar to it.
When Sam Leavitt started the season and wasn't anything to write home about, how many Arizona State fans kind of lamented the loss of Jaden Rashada and thought, oh, this is going to be our – this was our shot at a blue chipper, and here Sam Leavitt's been so consistent and so good that now you can see why the coaching staff probably didn't throw up their arms when Jaden Rashada, went to Georgia.
Yeah, he's getting better pretty consistently. I felt like he was inaccurate in his first 3 to 4 games, and then he made a tweak with his footwork so he wasn't hopping as much. He was more just kind of stepping more gently into his throws, which then improved his accuracy against Kansas and against Utah. He's got a lot of intangibles that are really great. He's a guy who shows up early, leaves late. He's ultra competitive. He's very smart. He learns quickly, and he's a very good athlete. So he doesn't get sacked. He has good pocket awareness. He scrambles on third downs or even fourth downs to get the chain. In fact, he scrambled on 4th and 7 for a first down, the play before he hit Tyson in the first quarter for a touchdown. And then he's had 0 bad decision interceptions, 4 interceptions on the season, but really none of them were actually mental mistakes where he didn't see a defender in zone coverage or something like that. He was inaccurate with a couple balls that got tipped and then intercepted. One ball just went right through Jordan Tyson's hands. And then another one, he got hit. 2 of them, he got hit as he was delivering the ball. The one that against Utah, he should have stepped up into the pocket. He's going to have to learn from that one because he was partially responsible. But he's got a lot of characteristics that are very impressive. His physical tools are great. He's already graded by PFF and some other analytics as being one of the better performing Big 12 quarterbacks this season, and he's only a redshirt freshman.
So, Chris, they've gone out to Lubbock, experienced that. That was a great game. Came up just short. Obviously, beat Utah, beat Kansas. A couple road trips upcoming. Just what have been your kind of thoughts on this this mutant Big 12 that's all these combinations of like 3 different waves of teams that have all joined together, or 3 or 4 different waves at this point. But what are your thoughts on the league and what you've seen so far?
Well, I'm still trying to learn as much as I can about a lot of these teams. I didn't watch much before this year, quite frankly, so I'm watching UCF against Cincinnati. I've seen pretty much all of ASU's opponents on the schedule, at least a game to 2 games. It's hard for me to say I'm super surprised because we're in this transfer portal era where you really don't know what to expect from some of these teams because they have the ability to change so much from year to year. And then the parity is it's unbelievable. We do power rankings and all that, and it's very difficult to in any given week. I mean, it's getting a bit easier now, but the first 4 weeks of the season, 5 weeks of the season, I'm like, okay, this team that I had 12th is now going to move up 6 spots to 6th. Then a team that was like Kansas is going to just drop like a rock all the way down, or Oklahoma State or whatever. I just think that it's so much parity, right? Somebody tweeted that there was an average point spread difference of 3.6 in last weekend's games. That's incredible. And so ultimately what you're going to have is just a whole bunch of close games in the fourth quarter. And who has the defense and or quarterback play and culture to be able to win a majority of those close games. And ASU's done well at that so far, and so have a few other teams. But that could flip on its ear on the back half of the schedule. So it's going to be very exciting for the duration of the schedule.
Chris, great stuff, man. Thank you very much. Remember when we first started talking to you back when there was all the possibility of what was going to happen with the 4 corner schools, and here we are halfway through or close to halfway through the Big 12 season. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
Love your show. Thanks a lot, guys.
Chris Cartman with us, Sun Devil source who covers Arizona State. What a great story they have been.
So I wanted to use this as a learning opportunity for fans who are watching Arizona State, because I myself had to learn this, and maybe a lot of you are smarter and already went and sought this out, so you got your answer. But I'd imagine there's probably a lot of people who are like me. When you watch Cam Scatterby, you're like, why is his head always shaking? Y'all ever notice that? Like, it's every time he's on camera, he's doing this. He's doing this. And I thought for the longest time, like, does he have a head injury? And he's like shaking the cobwebs off, because if he does, then everybody else is seeing this. So there's no way that's possible, because you wouldn't let him out on the field all game long, hit after hit after hit, shaking his head every time, right? So people have picked up on that, I'd imagine. Well, it's been answered. It's actually answered a couple years ago. But for anybody moving forward that wonders the same thing, watching him, of like, does he have a concussion? It's actually, according to him back in 2022, Twitter just thought I should address the head shakes during the game. During the game, I sweat, and it causes my face to be wet. While my sweat dries on my face, it causes my pads on the inside of my helmet to stick to my cheeks. If I had a head injury, I would address it. So I know that's maybe something that many have not thought about, but I think about it, or I thought about it every time I watched him. I was like, how is this being allowed? Like, he's shaking off the – so it's his helmet. Which you'd think they'd have a different type of fit maybe that could correct that, rather than having to do this like all the time. But that, for anybody else that's wondered that and it's bugged you, hopefully I gave you an answer that helps you out. I
wonder if he's a massive sweater, like a person who sweats a lot.
Perhaps, yeah, it makes sense.
Because like then the material doesn't matter. Soki, you and I have a friend named Adam, bachelor, who used to live here, big Iowa State fan, Adam. And if you ever did boot camp with Adam, and we're like laying on the like tennis courts next to him doing sit-ups, you could tell where Adam was at all times. Like, it was the
sweaty snow angel.
It was a crime scene every time.
Like, if there was a mat that he was on doing anything, you just should burn it.
Yeah, it was just maybe Cam Scatterby has giant pores on his head, and
it's because he takes so many shots when he's running so hard.
Well, that's what also makes you think of, like, does he have a concussion?
Well, that's good to know, because that otherwise that could go a long way. Like, why is he playing?
I mean,
I just think he was a lot of smelling salts.
I thought of it in the same way I thought of Major Applewhite's helmet never fit him. Yeah. And it always looked like it was right here, and he was like looking up in it. And I was at a dinner one time that he spoke at my grandparents' church, and a little girl got up and asked him, why doesn't your helmet fit? And And he said, oh, it fits. And she's like, huh? And he was like, no, it just looks that way.
Yeah, it does look like it was always like resting on the bridge of his nose. All right, a couple of notes on the Big 12 before we break for the 5 o'clock hour. BYU is 6-0. It's the 6th time they've done this. It's the 2nd time under Kalani Sitake. And he ties now the great Lavelle Edwards, who did it twice at 6-0. Pittsburgh is 6-0 for the first time since 1982. Texas is 6-0 for the first time since 2009. Played for the national title. Iowa State, first time since 1938. Their best start ever, 7-0.
And again, the best path, if you're somebody who's like pro Big 12, which, I think probably a large portion of this audience is. Although I like that, and there's also part of me that's like, that's not the way it should be. You should be
a pretty diverse.
You should be rooting for teams to lose, not trying to let's crowd the playoffs. But I also get that that's why that's a thing in this era, especially. So I'll just repeat what I said earlier. If you are somebody who's rooting for the Big 12 to have as much representation as possible in the playoffs, BYU and Iowa State need to go undefeated in the regular season and then go play a barn burner in Arlington. And I think that's your safest ticket to getting 2 teams in the playoff. K-State, if they run the table, they could have a chance as well. They go beat an undefeated in the championship game, BYU or Iowa State. Well, they got to play Iowa State, so that won't happen. But that's BYU and Iowa State. That's your clearest path to 2 Big 12 teams.
Yeah, and hey, and I don't think either one of them end up undefeated. I don't.
I don't either.
No. It's just
I'm
so
not sure
much.
who can. Like maybe, like right now I look at Texas is the team I think that has the best shot because their schedule works out that way, especially once they get past Georgia. But even then, like a trap game comes for all of them.
Hey, there's always the game when it's just weird, and it doesn't have to be a rivalry game. But yeah, we've discussed this. Here's a note about
Oregon's
UT.
got they play a couple of like borderline top 25 teams the rest of the way. Illinois and Michigan is all they have as far as ranked teams left on their schedule. So, and those two might not even both be ranked by the time they play them in a couple weeks. But yeah, they've got an easier path, I would say. But yeah, Texas feels like they're in a really good spot. And,
all right. Yeah. No, they look. And then now Georgia. And I have not they beat the hell out of Clemson, and then they had a great second half against Alabama, but they haven't I don't know if they're bored, distracted, but they better get their together in Austin. Now, there are 2 teams left in college football who have never trailed in a game this season. It's from Brett McMurphy. Army and Indiana. Indiana's going to have the huge pregame show on Saturday, big noon kickoff. They're hosting Nebraska, and Army and Navy are both ranked in the top 25. I absolutely just was thrilled when I saw that, so good for them too. So there's a couple of teams who have not trailed at all this season so far.
Army's got to play Notre Dame in a couple weeks, and I'd say Indiana, unless they're going to start beating Ohio State and Michigan in the same year, they're not going to go undefeated either. But they're both great stories right now, and shout out especially to Army and Bryson Daly, their quarterback, who's kind of a one-man show doing a little bit of everything for them, a young man from a small town here in Texas. So keeping tabs on him like I do a lot of the other guys from around here. Like I mentioned with Jordan Tyson there with Chris Cartman a second ago. But, yeah, Bryson Daly's been a great story for the Black Knights, and we'll see if with them they got Notre Dame, like I said. So I don't know about that one, but first they got to take care of East Carolina this weekend. But yeah, those are 2 great stories, and Cignetti's certainly got a following going on up there. And
he won a lot of games at James Madison.
Yeah.
Army Navy ranked for the first time, same time, simultaneously inside the top 25 for the first time since 1960. I want to talk about a couple of tight ends, and then Phil Bennett will join us. The kid from Penn State,
Tyler Warren.
17 catches, 224 yards, including a center flea flicker, made a catch, 1 touchdown in their comeback win, 17 catches for 224, second most receiving yards in Penn State history. And then he didn't have the same stats, but he is a beast and yet a weapon that gets overlooked. Gunnar Helm at Texas. That's a dude now, 6'5", 250, came out of Inglewood, Colorado. He was fantastic against Oklahoma, and once he has it in his hands, he's athletic. He reminds me of the guy from the Cowboys, Ferguson. Yeah, it reminds me of him, of how athletic he is for a big man.
First of all, on Tyler Warren, if not for Tyler Warren, Drew Aller has a career awful, worst game the other day because he was not hitting anybody else but Tyler Warren. But Warren was great. And then Gunnar Helm, to me, he's been the biggest surprise on offense for Texas outside of the fact that anybody can be a running back there, apparently, and work out well, although we know Trey Wisner really, really well from his time here. What? Yeah, Quintravian. I'm not going to call him that. I'm just going to call him Trey.
He wants to be called Quintravian, so I'll default to him. But we knew him as Trey, and that's a lot easier. Yeah.
So, we saw him when he was a baby.
Yeah.
But he clearly made the decision to be Quintravian Wisner on the roster and on TV and all that. So we'll respect that.
Yeah. But I still don't want to call him that, but I will. But Gunnar Helm, one of the things I think we talked about was, okay, it's not just the wide receivers they lost. Jatavian Sanders was a huge athletic, stud tight end.
Yeah.
And
they haven't missed him.
Gunnar Helm stepped right into that role
Helm's
really well.
Probably more of the tight end, prototypical tight end, big dude. But I wanted to bring him up because I thought there were a couple of plays in what was a blowout and pretty quickly. Once Texas started recovering, I have a question for you. Have you ever seen Texas not recover their own fumble or somebody else's fumble? In my lifetime, I don't think that's ever happened, where they have not, recovered a fumble. They had 3 consecutive fumbles in that game. What a great job by Bolden to hustle down Silas Bolden, who really, who knows what that would have done. Maybe made it 34 to eventually 10. I don't know. All right, when we come back, we'll have Phil Bennett, former Baylor and longtime assistant coach and head coach at SMU. He's next. This is 365 Sports. Texas Beef House wrapped up another auction on a Saturday evening, and they did it to me again. I was in the running for 2 big, thick Wagyu fillets and 2 thick boneless ribeyes. Thought I had it. Put up a number. Went above the number that was in the auction, the live auction. Go to TexasBeefHouse.com or bidonbeef.com. And I thought I had it. I even went up about $4 above what was at the time, highest bid. And it was later in the day on Saturday, and I lost out. I got that damn text or email that says you were beaten out. Then I went back in, and somebody else went a little bit higher than I, and I was done. But they do, 3 this month? 3 live auctions in the month of October. Wagyu beef, Angus cattle on their ranch just outside of Tyler, and 3 times live auction where you can bid on hamburger patties or any kind of steaks or even roast or tri-tip, name it, they have it, and then you pay what you want to pay. And if it goes too high, you walk away. Rather, when you walk in the grocery store, this is what you're going to pay. You don't walk up to the counter and go, hey, this says $38 for a couple of ribeyes. I'd like to pay $36. Nope. That's the sticker price. With TexasBeefHouse.com, you pay what you want to pay as much as you want, or walk away and then just do the next auction. TexasBeefHouse.com.
Get ready, Baylor fans. The ultimate game weekend experience awaits you at the Baylor Club. Kick off your weekend with our Friday Night Live pep rally. With live entertainment and special appearances from the Baylor Spirit Squad, it's the perfect way to start your game weekend with a roar. On Saturdays, don't miss our Knox Hall tailgate. Enjoy delicious food, ice-cold drinks, and great company as you gear up for the big game. And after the weekend's excitement, wrap it all up with our famous Bear brunches on Sundays. Don't wait. Make your game weekends legendary with the Baylor Club membership today.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit Marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sikkim 365 app is brought to you by Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
We're now joined by Phil Bennett. He has been playing golf. We didn't interrupt your round, did we?
No, we finished. I actually finished with a natural birdie, our last birdie on our last hole. And I'm riding with a friend of mine, Steve Vaughn, who can validate that.
Put it on speaker so he can validate it then.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Yeah, no, natural birdie.
Okay, all right. And this was this the Dan Pastorini tournament?
Yeah, it was for angels, for kids with physical issues. Dan does a wonderful job. He's done it for 17 years. Wheelchairs. All the things that kids with disabilities need. It's a great call.
Phil, you never know. That's why they play the games. But in your opinion, after what you saw Texas do to Oklahoma, they have Georgia this week. We know who Georgia is, but they don't seem to be quite right now. What's it going to take to beat Texas?
You know, one of the things I thought when I watched Texas and OU, obviously – right now, OU doesn't have any juice. They have no star players. They're struggling at quarterback. They're good, not great on defense, but offensively, they're poor in the O-line, poor at receiver, poor at running back, poor at quarterback. I think that Texas has some vulnerabilities on defense that haven't been challenged. I think Georgia is good enough throwing the ball to give them some problems that they haven't seen in the games they played to this point. You know, Michigan could not throw the ball. And even though it was a great win, I told people, I said, Michigan might be 6-6 this year. Georgia's capable of beating them. I think Texas is better, but Georgia can defend them better than anybody they play.
Coach, Oklahoma, I'm an OU fan, go way back, and I haven't seen the fan base this flustered in quite a long time. Your thoughts on what you see? Obviously, the offense is an absolute mess on that side of the ball, but what do you think about what you see from the Sooners?
Well, I'm telling you, Seth Luttrell's a great coach. He is dealing with a situation of not having a quarterback, very average or below average offensive line, no explosive receivers, no explosive running back. That's a bad combination. And I'm just telling you that right now, with Dylan Gabriel gone, their best receivers hurt, they're going to be a target for a lot of people.
Coach, this was the craziest weekend as far as close games that I've seen in a long time, and we've all seen in a long time. I'll start. The first one I want to ask you about is Ohio State and Oregon. Will Howard made a really, bad decision right at the end of that game, but I think that takes away from Dylan Gabriel is just a gamer. What is it like to have a quarterback like that when the moment is big, he meets it almost every time?
You know, I don't know if you know this, but my son was coach at Hawaii. And Dylan is from Hawaii. And I went over there one time and I watched him. Dylan's only about 5'10", but he is, as you said, he's a little baller. And everywhere he's gone, you know, he's with Jeff Levy and Heupel at UCF. Then it's with him to Oklahoma. I mean, he is a baller. And he's at his, I think, maybe his 6th year. He's knowledgeable, knows where to distribute it, doesn't waste, and he has players around him. That Evan Stewart from A&M really showed what he was about. And I want to tell you something. Will Howard's a really good player, but this is the second time he's done that. I don't know if you remember this, but back when he was at Kansas State a year ago, they played at Texas. He let the clock run out, made a bad decision in that game also. That doesn't mean I thought that Ryan Day put him in a bad situation. They could have kicked the field goal. It should have been a speed out, something the ball with 5 or 6 seconds that they could get a play with 1 second. And I felt like that was a coaching error also.
A lot was going on in that game. Oregon, Ohio State was a classic. And then obviously the Texas rout of Oklahoma too. What was your thoughts? So with Deion and Colorado, they're playing better. They were beaten at home by K-State. Avery Johnson threw the ball when they needed him to do it, but they might not have Hunter. I don't know. There's no official update on that. They might not have Jimmy Horn. They have plenty of receivers, but they had minus 29 yards rushing, Phil, in that game against K-State.
It's going to be hard to win with that. As good as Sedura is, the receivers are good. I think they're really playing nice football on offense. But if you can't rush the football, the game changes on you. And there's, I look at the Big 12, and what an exciting, everybody, in the point spread within 2, 3, 4 point games. It's got a chance to be an unbelievable finish. And I'm not sure Colorado, 2 things. I don't think they can play defense at that level. And if they can't rush the ball, they can't help their defense. So I think that takes them out of it.
Coach, did you ever cross paths really with Kalani Sitake, BYU's head coach, at all over the years?
I did. I knew him way back when he was a player. He's a sharp guy. I did a clinic one time in Salt Lake City, and he was on the staff. He wasn't the head coach. Very impressive young guy. And, I don't know if you know this, but Jeff Grimes worked for him. Jeff Grimes was a GA for me at A&M, and he worked for him at BYU and just absolutely loved him.
Everybody seems to. I mean, we have him on all the time. He's just got that, and he's got his team believing that not only can they win, but they can pummel people, and that's what they're doing, Coach.
I will tell you this: they're physical. They remind me of a earlier Utah team. I mean, they're not explosive in a lot of different areas, but the bottom line is they keep hammering you into submission, and you look up and you say, damn, we're down 20 points, and you can't get back in the game.
Yeah, they've been a surprise. Arizona State, you had a time there before they made the change, and now they've made another one, of course, with what Kenny Dillingham's doing his second year. They've got a running back that I've said this before, that you would love to have if you got into a fight in a back alley in Scattaboo. Man, they're
you know who he reminds me of? He reminds me of Shock Linwood.
Okay.
I mean, he is fast, hard to bring down, can catch the ball. He can do it all. And I'm telling you now, the thing that they're doing is Brian Ward, their defensive coordinator, is a young guy that I've sort of mentored over the years. He has got them doing the things they need to do. They're keeping the ball in front of them. They're not giving up explosive plays, and they're getting a ton of takeaways. And obviously that atmosphere out there, I don't know if you watched any of it, but they're liking what Kenny's doing there in Tempe.
Well, at the same time, and that's a fan base that can get bored pretty quickly, but that's a huge school. How electric is it what he's doing there then to get them all locked in?
Well, I'm telling you, I mean, if you watch the end zone, the south end zone was rocking. And I'm telling you, 2 or 3 times Utah had third, short, third, and medium that they ended up rising, got frustrated, and they ended up taking penalties on delay of game.
Coach, speaking of tough atmospheres, Baylor heading to Lubbock this week. I know you had some of the neutral site stuff in that series between Baylor and Texas Tech, but just over the course of your career, how many trips to Lubbock did you ever make? And if so, how did that experience kind of stack up amongst the rowdiest or toughest places to play?
They love their football in Lubbock. You know, people used to say, hell, there's nothing else to do.
Yeah.
But I think I told you, on Labor Day, I went and watched the Texas Tech Abilene Christian game.
That's right.
You know, great atmosphere. They finished the end zone complex. Joey has done a really good job, has a great staff, you know, got a lot of Baylor guys there. You know, he's got all his ties. They have really come back from losing to Washington State. I think they're a team right now that could be in the mix for this championship. I think that they know they're coming off an open date, and they know Baylor is a capable team. So I think this will be one of the better games this weekend.
You mentioned how teams play, and that obviously some teams, when they play you like BYU, you come out of that game, you need an ice bath for the rest of the weekend. How about what going on at Iowa State? Matt Campbell's had a couple of teams that have been really good, and then about the time you think, then they slip back. They have 3 different type running backs. They have a guy that hurts you when he runs in Jordan, but what they're doing right now going into Morgantown and winning that game methodically.
David, I thought that 2 weeks ago, I've watched them twice. I watched all of their Iowa games, and I was very impressed. I mean, it was 2 physical teams, and Iowa State truly out physical to win the game. And then I watched the Baylor-Iowa State game. Baylor played really well the first half, and you saw it as well as I did. Iowa State just came in. They took it over the second half. I mean, they just grinded the game out. And last week, you know, they played a team, and we all know playing at West Virginia is hard. I think they're the real deal. I like their quarterback. They've got 3 backs. They reminded me of when we had Shock and Glasgow and Sistrom, all those guys we had. I mean, they're 3-headed monsters running the ball.
So does Georgia look good to you?
You know, I think they're deceptively good. I don't think they're running the ball as well as they did with Monken. I just don't think. But I'm telling you now, the kid threw for almost 400 yards. I think defensively, I think Jeff Levy last week with a freshman quarterback did a really good job against them. I tell you, going into this game with Texas, I think Ewers is a good player. I'm not willing to get on the table and say he's an All-American. I'm just not. I don't know why, but I'm not. Kirby's a guy, you know, he's listening to all this deal about, hey, you can't stop them. You know, I think this game is going to be a lot tighter than people believe it is. I don't think that Texas will overpower them like they did Oklahoma, and I think they're capable of beating them. I do, but I think Georgia will put up a hell of a fight.
Phil Bennett with us on 365 Sports on Mondays, driving back after playing in the Dan Pastorini Charitable Golf Tournament on his way back to College Station.
Phil, did you see how Georgia Tech and North Carolina ended?
I did. Oh, my God.
Is that – look, you're a defensive coordinator. So I know that had to hit you in a certain spot where Georgia Tech was clearly playing for overtime and just ran a zone read and scored a 68-yard touchdown.
You know, Craig, I've watched North Carolina. Of course, Randy's there, Randy Clemens. I mean, they're poorly coached and they're poor on defense. I mean, I've watched them. I would like to make an excuse, but I can't. I've watched them against James Madison. I saw them against Duke. Just that And what you're saying is exactly right. They had no intention to risk turning the ball over, and the Haynes kid took the ball on a zone dive and was the thing that bothered me the most, and you saw it as well as I did, he was untouched. I mean, never contact on a zone dive. And they're just not – they haven't played very well at all defensively.
Phil, I want to take you outside of the college realm for a second. The Cowboys yesterday in Arlington, and we don't talk about the NFL much, but we have a couple of Cowboys analysts later in the week. They were obliterated by Detroit. And, I mean, Detroit was laughing at them and even tried to run it up with a couple of trick plays because of last year's game where the two-point conversion was overruled. But my question for you is, did you watch the game, and did you see anybody quitting?
You know, I'm very close to Dan Campbell and Aaron Glenn. Aaron Glenn, and I signed Aaron Glenn to Purdue, and he couldn't get in school and went to Navarro, and then went to A&M. And Dan was there when I played. I love both of them. It was obvious to me, Smokey, that there was two different mentalities on the field. Dan Dan's guys are in the prove it mode. The Cowboys are in, a groove it mode. Whatever you want. They seem to, like it's going to happen automatically. They were by far the superior team in physicality and being prepared, making decisions. Let's be honest. And I watched enough of it to see the Cowboys didn't want to tackle anybody. I know they're missing some players, but they could not tackle Montgomery, could not tackle the back. The quarterback was never challenged. It was a dominant. I don't know if I can remember when the Cowboys have been more dominated than that game.
About a month ago, but still. But Phil, I did. Here's one thing I loved about Dan Campbell's game plan. They lost the game because they tried to run a little sneaky play and didn't report the numbers right last year on a tackle eligible. Well, they ran like 10 different tackle eligible plays this year for spite.
Yep, they did. I
want to tell you, Dan sets the tempo. You ask every one of those kids that plays for him. The other thing that people don't realize, they lost their best defensive player in that game. Mm-hmm. So I think this Hutchinson kid is the heart and soul of their defense, and I think they wanted to win even more so after he got injured before halftime.
There's a question on the chat room, and I know you got to go. Appreciate you doing this on the way back from playing golf. Question for Phil: what will it take for K-State to have an LM defense again? Is that something that I don't know much of what that is?
Yeah.
Oh, lynch mob. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And it's football is different today. Number one, I mean, they have moved the rules to the point that it's an offensive game. And I don't know if you're going to see a defense can do some of the things that we were able to do when I was at K-State, when Bob Stoops was at K-State. I'm not sure Bobby Elliott. I'm not sure that you'll see that again. But I think that with the tempo and all the offenses, I think they're good on defense. I just don't know if there's ever going to be a defense that you just sit there and say, hey, this is a closed-out defense. Because I'm not sure the rules will allow it. I mean, they make it an offensive game.
Hey, did you have any other birdies, or did you guys – because these charity tournaments, there's some people with these teams that are set up where they shoot 28 under par, some ridiculous number.
Hey, they were stacked up. I think we finished 11 under, and it was a lot of fun. And I was playing with much better golfers than me. But I don't know if you remember Bubba Bean.
Oh, yeah.
Bubba Bean was a running back for us at A&M.
Yep.
First round pick. Bubba, Steve Vaughn, Mark Dennard, all conference, All-American center. It was sort of an Aggie group. We had a really good time. And but I will tell you this. We probably were if you ask the cart girls, we were the hot team on the cart girls.
Bubba Bean, the first thing I thought about was not A&M. The first thing I thought about was Kirbyville, Texas.
Kirbyville. That's where he's from.
That's where he's from. Yeah.
I tell you what, he was a great football player, great teammate. And, I'd be remorse if I didn't say this today on the radio. We're all sad. One of our best players I ever played with, George Woodard, Woo Woo Woodard, passed away over the weekend at 69 years old in Dallas. And we're all Aggies are extremely sad about George. He was a wonderful person and just a kind soul, but one of the baddest running backs you've ever seen.
He was a dude.
He was a dude.
Yeah, he was.
I used to tell him in practice, I said, I'd rather take a beating than to have to scrimmage you.
Oh, yeah. He was the start of a little bit of a run where you had those 250 to 280-pound running backs, right? Craig Ironhead Hayward is no longer with us, and a couple other guys, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And just the thing about him, he was from Van Vleck, Texas, and just a super, super good guy. I mean, I used to watch him deal with walk-ons and different. He was kind to everybody. You'd have never known he was a player. He was that kind of guy.
Phil, thank you, and be careful on the way home. Thanks for your time. Glad you had a chance to enjoy golf. We'll talk to you again. Thank you so much.
All right, we'll talk soon. Bye-bye.
Phil Bennett on many things, a lot of the different games, a lot of the trends. UT and the Georgia this week, and, of course, some Big 12 stuff. And then also I had a question sent to me on a direct message, and we had Phil on, and he kind of discussed this. He was wondering about promoting from within, because Dabo did that at Clemson, right? With what Venables has done from Joe John Finley, then Seth Luttrell, and, of course, we know that Phil and Seth are very tight. He mentioned that after Levy left, it's hard to say that play calling is the problem. They just don't have the horses, and they should have them by year 3. No question. Craig brought that up early. Phil just brought that up. And the other thing is they allowed a guy that might win a national championship and a Heisman Trophy, no matter what he wanted to do. When he left and they left it in their hands, you heard all this stuff about Jackson Arnold. They're a shell of themselves. Absolutely a shell of themselves. And Hawkins, great kid, but how many times did he go back to throw and he was already running towards each one of the sidelines, running for his life? They had no chance. I don't know what the longest pass he threw in that game. Maybe there was one of about 20 yards. I don't remember.
So the only chance that they would have had offensively, to me, to hang with Texas would be if Deion Burks and Nick Anderson were playing the game, so we had some playmakers to heave something up to, right? To maybe, throw a quick slant pass, have Deion Burks shake somebody and run past them. Neither played. So this is offensively the shallowest roster that Oklahoma's had in a very, very long time. They just don't have those guys on that side of the ball. It's easier and quicker to get them now, but still, offensive line's not as good. So they've got to really rebuild probably 9 positions on that roster next year.
They had 3 consecutive, and it may not have been exactly 3 consecutive, where Oklahoma turned it over. Texas, of course, forced a couple of turnovers. Then they had the great hustle play by Bolden in the end zone. Tell me what you thought was the longest play from scrimmage for Oklahoma in that game against Texas.
17 yards.
No, too high. 15. 15 yards. Longest run was 13. Longest pass was 15. Longest offensive play from scrimmage for them was 15 yards.
Yeah, and I'm sure there will be Oklahoma fans who don't appreciate what he had to say because he's not throwing Seth Luttrell under the bus. I mean, that's his guy. I wouldn't expect him to. There's a lot of people that don't. Want Seth Luttrell to coach another game. So we'll see where that goes for Brent Venables. But, yeah, the offensive line is a shell of the greatness that it's been for years and years and years under Bill Biedenbaugh, and the quarterback position suffering as a result of that, and also not having the string of quarterbacks that Lincoln Riley brought in that were all Heisman winners or contenders year after year after year. And it's not like Oklahoma ran Lincoln Riley out of town. he made the choice to leave them. So it's not as though you go, well, damn, we should have kept him. You didn't have a choice. But, for all the bad mouthing, well, yeah, the defense sucked. Well, now the defense is good and the offense sucks. So, it's just the opposite of what it was. And you're in a worse spot, actually, than you were when the offense was great and the defense was horrific. So, it's just a tale of, two weaknesses that they've been dealing with these last few years now that have prevented them from getting to the top. And at least with the offense being great under Lincoln Riley, you were in contention. You were still making the playoff. You were winning the Big 12. Now, remember that bet Kendall Cout had?
Yeah, I saw you put that up.
Yeah. He bet 3 years ago. He put it up for Oklahoma fans. He said that he felt like they had lost the mastermind behind their magic in Lincoln Riley and that they were basically in for a rude awakening moving forward. Now, I don't totally agree with him on that because, they didn't have a choice with Lincoln Riley. He left them in the middle of the night. Yeah. What were they supposed to do about that? So it wasn't as though they, get out of here, Lincoln. But to his point, it was more of just a push in the direction of them becoming who did he compare them to, Arkansas or something like that? Which is come on, Kendall. Dude, they got 7 national titles and more than a handful of Heisman. They're not freaking Arkansas in any way, shape, or form except for they wear shades of red and they're in the SEC and they're neighboring states. There's a lot of commonalities, but the football is not one of them. There's 2 very different weight classes they're punching from. And historically, you can go back to right after World War II in Oklahoma. That's when their reigns, were really starting up and they were making their names for themselves with Bud Wilkinson and all those guys. So Bud, Barry, Bob, Riley, they've had their run.
No, there's a reason why they're Oklahoma.
Right. So my point being is that you don't just dismiss them as oh, it's all over. But I've had this concern since they were announced to the SEC. Just like you couldn't do anything about Lincoln Riley, there's no way you could say no to the money disparity and the prestige and the TV slots and everything that comes with the SEC. You had to make that move, especially because Texas was going to make that move with or without you, and you had been at an even more extreme disadvantage. But I do wonder, where they find themselves, because his bet was that they would not win a Big 12 or SEC title in 5 years. Well, guess what? This is year 3. They didn't win the last 2 in the Big 12. They're not winning it this year in the SEC, and there's not a whole lot of reason to believe they'll turn it around in the next couple of years and suddenly be on top of that league. Even though it's possible, it's only 2 years left on that bet. Now, I don't think anybody ever jumped up and actually took that bet, as much as they were mouthing off in the replies about it. But he'd feel really good about donating to charity here in the next couple of years, because there's no sign that they're going to be on top of the SEC in the next couple of years.
It takes one, either you do it in a way, methodically, the way Sarkisian's done it, where he had a lot of talent, and that's not the narrative. I'm not being lazy about that, because they also didn't have enough of the right talent, but he's now built it where they all are no longer hey, I'm so-and-so, my blank doesn't stink. They are all locked in. Secondly, it takes a dynamic type quarterback. You're going to have to get that. And he might be able to help play the defense, but they just look awful. That team that lost 49-0, at least you could see they had something.
Well, no,
right?
There was a post-game show I was listening to, and they asked the question of, was this worse than 49-0? And unanimously said yes.
Absolutely.
It was worse than getting the 49-0 the loss to Texas, because you at least had excuses for that. You had the quarterback's hurt and this and that. This is no, these were you had everybody you need. No, you didn't have wide receivers, granted. That wasn't changing the outcome of that game. That wasn't changing the outcome of that game. I don't care if you're missing all top 5 guys. Everybody acknowledges that that's something that hurts you. But we also know that wasn't it was Marvin Harrison Jr. and freaking, Olave. They didn't get the Ohio State wide receiving core from a couple years ago. That's suddenly missing from that roster. So, yeah, that hurts, but it doesn't hurt to the point of how bad you got beat by Texas. So, I wonder. I don't think they're winning the SEC in the next couple of years. I think Kendall would have won that bet if anybody actually did take him up on it. But, yeah, they're in a bad spot, guys. I mean, they are, and I felt better about Michael Hawkins just because I thought he'd give you a little bit of a jolt, but the problems run deeper than that, so it doesn't really matter who the quarterback is, and we'll see how that plays out the rest of the year. But there's a very realistic possibility. If you're not careful, you don't go make a bowl game,
Kendall's tweet was, I will bet $1,000 for charity that OU does not win a Big 12 title or SEC title by 2026. And Eddie Radosevich, who's a guy who covers Oklahoma, and he's a big OU guy. But do you know how blanking dumb that sounds? That tweet was in 2022. So you've had 2022, 2023, and they're surely not going to do it in 2024. Like you said, he's just a couple of years away for Kendall to be right. And
yeah.
They hate him for that. And he's probably right, and sometimes the truth hurts.
Well, he's more right than he's wrong at this point because they've passed the halfway mark, and there's no sign that they're going to prove him wrong in the next 2 years because it's not happening this year. So they get South Carolina this weekend at home. You'd think they'd win that game, but maybe not.
Let me tell you something. South Carolina had Alabama in trouble.
I know.
Yeah.
And so you'd think they'd win that game at home, but if they don't, which is a very realistic possibility, I don't know how you're making a bowl game, fellas, because you got South Carolina at home, at Ole Miss, then Maine at home, that tough SEC late game scheduling. So there's a win. So there's 5 wins. But South Carolina at number 18 Ole Miss, at number 19 Missouri, home versus number 7 Alabama, at number 8 LSU. Yep. They got 4 of the last 5 games on their schedule are top 25 teams.
Yep, I agree.
So you better beat South Carolina this weekend or it's going to be real difficult to see how you even make the postseason.
We have talked quite a bit about Oklahoma. We've tried to give you as much on the coverage when it came to Texas dominating them and being the number 1 ranked team in the country. Oregon, Ohio State, LSU in their win that looks like they all of a sudden might have their mojo getting back inside the top 10. We did not show you any of the conference schedule. No, I mean the top 25 schedule this week. Garrett, do we have that? So Friday night, Oregon, after the huge win against Ohio State, they will play at Purdue. Purdue's a mess. Graham Harrell, the offensive coordinator.
Purdue had you want to talk about another gut-wrenching loss. They had scored 40 points against Illinois' vaunted defense in the second half, force overtime, then get to overtime, go for 2, took a sack, ball game over.
I know. So Illinois has now won twice. This is what happens when all of a sudden you go from a 5 to 7 win team to maybe more, because remember they went overtime and beat Nebraska, and Nebraska went backwards on 4 consecutive plays.
The craziest thing about the Purdue thing is, one, Graham Harrell was feeling pretty good about a week ago about being the scapegoat, not so much when they turn around and they score damn near 50, the following week, but Illinois was leading that game 27-3 in the early third quarter.
Yeah.
And end up winning 50-49 in overtime.
Yep.
That's so Purdue, hats off to, they're 1-5, they stink, but that was a valiant effort to almost upend the Illini.
The rest of the top 25, there you have Clemson, who've gotten kind of they're starting to get their thing going again. They haven't beaten anybody.
Cade Klubnik's playing really, really well. Thought maybe he was part of the problem, but he's actually played pretty brilliant for the most part this year. Virginia's a team that I forget even exists, but they're like the, number 3 expansion candidate or whatever. But I see them on this list, and I'm like, that's the first time I've thought about Virginia football this entire season.
Nebraska, watch out what they have to do. They're on the road against a really dynamic Indiana team. If you take the metrics, whatever the efficiency numbers are, and you add offense and defense together, they're number 1 in the country. Unbeaten, playing well, explosive. That game's an 11 o'clock game in Bloomington, and again, Fox noon kickoff will be there.
Kurt Cignetti is fantastic, and he built up JMU. JMU scores 100 points on everybody. Seems like every week.
Yeah, ask Mac Brown.
Yeah, they were one of the first ones to kind of expose that this season. Although going back to last year, it's a cavalcade of people scoring points on the Tar Heels. But I'm very impressed because. Look, Indiana, they don't have a lot going for them right now because it's a basketball school that has not been able to be a basketball school for quite a long time. They just keep hitting the wall. And football has never been kind of a big thing there, but man.
Babe Laufenberg, did he go to Indiana? Yeah, he did. Yeah.
So
I think Nebraska should go in there and win that game, man. That's kind of about time for them to roll in there.
If they're going to be more than
If they're more than
falling asleep at the end of the 100-meter track, they have to win a game like this. Because otherwise, guess who's next? At Ohio State. I think it's at Ohio State.
Good news is after Ohio State is one of the worst teams in all of college football in UCLA.
Yeah.
They are sorry, man. They suck.
All right. Auburn at Missouri. Auburn is like, they're good enough to just kind of, you got it. In Missouri, last time they played, they got their asses kicked by A&M.
I think they'll bounce back. I think Hugh Freeze is going to have a hard time building a culture at Auburn.
Okay.
And
if he does survive, and he's got probably a massive contract, they have like one of the top 5 recruiting classes in the country right now.
Yeah, I think he's just in kind of a weird spot there. But the problem is that are they going to let him? Okay, the top 5 recruiting classes in the country, great. Are they going to be good enough in the next 3 years? Should they not let go of him to satisfy a fan base and an alumni group that at the drop of a hat decides they don't like you?
They might be more impatient than anybody else in the country. I
get what y'all are saying, but what are they going to go do?
Yeah, well, I mean,
who are you going to go get now?
That's the thing. Yeah. They don't ask themselves that question.
Right.
We can. They don't.
No, they just
and so they just
they want Kenny Dillingham.
I mean, I'm with you, and I'm not a Hugh Freeze fan by any means, but like at some point you look around, and you're like, all right, Saban's not in town anymore, so it's like who. You got to let some things play out, and there's not just a bunch of coaches that are automatics growing on trees out there for Auburn, to act like they're first in line on anything. I do think there's a chance that ends up not working out, but I think it's too early to say that right now. But they're definitely in a hole. That Oklahoma loss didn't do them any favors because that was right there for the taking, and they let that one slip away, and then you get Georgia right after that. So they're in a tough stretch of their schedule. Especially now having to go to Missouri.
There are 3 bangers in the top 25. We're not skipping over East Carolina Army. I'm so thrilled for West Point and also the Naval Academy, their football teams. Alabama, Tennessee, Michigan, Illinois, and then, of course, the Georgia-Texas game are bangers. 2 ranked teams playing each other. Alabama, I watched that game with South Carolina because I guess it almost put me to sleep. I almost went and took a nap. And give South Carolina credit because they were fighting back, and then the onside kick, and then Kalen DeBoer, had they not won that game, would they have literally? What would they have done? I mean, it's hard enough that they lost to Vanderbilt, who then, of course, they won again.
What's his name that called in to the Legend?
Oh, Legend.
Yeah. Strike 2, dude. That's what it would have been.
We don't lose to Vanderbilt.
Well, that's a double play you don't want to turn, which is losing to Vanderbilt and South Carolina.
South Carolina looks like they got some dudes, man.
Okay. Yeah, they do. But historically, the 2 bottom feeders in the SEC are South Carolina and Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
And if you put their resumes side by side, it's not like South Carolina's going to run away with that. And so, I mean,
Michigan,
that would have been bad.
That was awful quarterback play at the end. I don't know what y'all were like. That was terrible quarterback play. I know that you got a young stud there, but my God, that you threw the game away. I mean, for no reason too. On more than one occasion, that was painful to watch. You kind of just throw away an opportunity like that.
Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, which would be fun. Georgia Tech could cause some problems there. They could have. Is Haynes King okay? I mean,
we'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't play at the end of the game.
He gives them a chance against most anybody. Michigan and Illinois, a team that Michigan that you forget about. They won the national title, by the way. And Jim Harbaugh's doing just fine in the NFL. And then, of course, Illinois with Brett Bielema. They had the huge win in Lincoln, and they just keep kind of doing their thing. Charlotte Navy. Good luck to the midshipmen. Hope they keep winning. A&M, is it traditionally Mississippi State that gives them trouble? I don't know what their series record is. Remember we were at covering a game, Baylor in Texas in Austin, Paul. We were walking around all the tailgating.
That's when they beat Alabama.
And Dak Prescott and Mississippi State thumped them pretty good.
Yeah, Mississippi State doesn't have a quarterback right now. I mean, Blake Shapen's out for the year. This very much looks like a year 1 team. And I don't have any faith in Mississippi State getting anybody right now.
LSU, after the pretty much not miracle win, but a hell of a win because it looked like they were dead and buried against Arkansas on the road. Arkansas frisky after winning a couple weeks ago. Georgia, Texas, we've discussed that quite a bit. And really whoever, if Georgia loses, I would love to know where they would go, even though it's number one and the other loss is to what is 7th-ranked Alabama. Are the pollsters scared to death to have Georgia or Alabama fall out of the top 10?
I don't know, but Mississippi State did hang 31 on them for as much as we're downplaying them. They just scored 31 on Georgia.
I watched a lot of that game.
So it might not be great, but it's looking like there's signs of improvement or signs to build off of some of what you've seen so far. And I don't think anybody anticipated this being any kind of a big year one for Jeff Lebby. But, yeah, I mean, we already know the drill. 3 losses for I guess Georgia's 1 loss is I don't even know how to put a proper comparison, but it seems like theirs count as half losses versus everybody else's, right? Like you get a couple mulligans, everybody else gets 1 mulligan. But you're Georgia, so when you lose, it's, this happened, or it gets explained somehow or another, whereas other teams just lose and then all right, see ya, flick.
Yeah, you find the immediately, okay, are they out of the college football playoff? So what if they are? What if they actually are? Football won't stop. The world keeps moving. The sun comes up, the moon comes up, and vice versa. All right, then you have Georgia, Texas, SMU at Stanford. And this is what we always thought about the history of the ACC, right? Stanford on the road in Dallas. SMU on the road in California, Palo Alto. And the Mustangs are quietly, and maybe not so quietly, number 21 in the country.
And if you act now, you can get your tickets to that exclusive game, private showing of Stanford and SMU, because that's what it'll feel like at that stadium. SMU will throttle them. Notre Dame beat the brakes off of Stanford this week.
42-7 or whatever.
The question needs to be asked about, their offense and Mike Denbrock of can they, win a game if they have to pass more, but Stanford didn't make them have to answer that question.
I know we don't get ACC network ratings, but I imagine that might be one of the lowest rated watched college football games of the entire year at that level, like at a Power 4 level.
Mm-hmm.
SMU, Stanford on the ACC network. Yep. I mean, there might be tens of people watching that game on Saturday. I mean, really,
I don't disagree with
SMU's great. I mean, they're a really good team. I don't like using they're not great, but they're really good.
They're explosive.
Yeah, they're really good.
Yeah, I mean they got a good thing going. All right, real quickly, Paxton won the college football pick'em and the $100 gift card from TexasBeefHouse.com. I will have them be in touch with Paxton. Paul Catalina was 9-1. Staff standings, you picked up a game on Craig?
I did. So
he's up by 2 or 3 now?
Yeah, so basically he's up by 3 on me.
Yeah.
So basically I need to go 9-1 every week.
It's like you in a golf tournament, you shoot 63 and don't gain any ground on anybody, and you're still...
Man, that was looking like it was going to be really ugly for me there for a little while, and I guess it probably would have been ugly for you too, considering we're only 1 game off, but that Tennessee-LSU game, the Tennessee game swung when it looked like Tennessee was... I mean, their offense is atrocious right now. They're awful on offense. Nico, the $7 million man,
Arkansas
is well overpaid.
Arkansas exposed them. They came up with a defense that people are using, and the play action's not there right now. Yeah,
their offense is not good, but they found a way to win at home. Like that was a bad Florida team that was about to beat you on your turf, and they pulled that one out, and then. What were some of the other the LSU game, obviously, was one that flipped there at the end.
Syracuse was tight.
Syracuse was another one.
Kansas State was losing to Colorado. The other game that was Ohio State, Oregon could have flipped. I picked Ohio State. I can't see who that is right there. Not sure who that is, but I went 7-3. Paul went 9-1. Craig went 8-2, and Paxton won it at 8-2. The Texas Beef House college football pick.
You know what's funny? Earlier today, the chat room was saying, well, no, just give it to Paul. I literally cannot take it. So I would love to, but I can't.
Yeah, no, you can't. Even though we would love most, you know what? Paxton's one of those that's a lightning rod in the chat room. Although, because UT's playing so well, he's been very almost like nice.
Well, I mean, look.
Cocky as hell. He's 12. He's 22 going on 12, but no, really.
Yeah.
He actually sent me a text over the weekend and said, Paul won Pick'em, congratulations. And I just did not want to have to go back and forth with him because Texas had just hammered Oklahoma, and I didn't want to end up being a slew of like 25 texts. But Paxton, thanks for contacting me, and congratulations. I'll get in touch with Texas Beef House to get in touch with you. Paul Catalina's top 5.
If your business is like most, you need things done quickly. But if you're still tying your critical applications together on multiple shared public networks, you've probably been feeling the slowdown. And that's no good for business. A private UPN fiber network can get you and your business moving at the speed of light. Whatever you need, we can build it. Internet, Metro Ethernet, Waves, dark fiber. We deliver custom private networks and are focused on business customers only. Our next generation 100% fiber optic infrastructure offers you low latency and ultra scalable bandwidth with speeds up to 100 gigabit to run your critical applications. Your connection won't be limiting your performance anymore. It's diverse and scalable, so it can grow and change as your business grows and changes. And with a secure carrier-grade private network, you'll have all the reliability you need. Contact UPN today to learn more. Fast just got faster.
Time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Welcome into the Top 5. It's Monday, the Monday after one of the craziest weekends of college football ever. And we're going to give our Week 7 awards presented by Texas Beef House. Go to betonbeef.com, use our promo code 365sports at each auction and get a discount off of your order. Today, let's go through these awards. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. Number 5, this is a bad award. The You Can't Take Him With You award goes to Lincoln Riley. Dude, you had 3 timeouts. You just let the clock run out. The hell, man? What's going on, Lincoln? You can't. They don't appreciate over time. It's not like an IRA where you take your timeouts and you save them, and then one day instead of having 3, you have 5.2 timeouts. That's not how this works, Lincoln. You use them. You move down the field. You kick a field goal. You win the game. You win the game, and you're 4-2 and not 3-3. I don't know why I'm telling you this. I'm just a fat guy yelling. That's all I am. That's the only qualification I have for this other than a basic knowledge of how timeouts work. You're the guy who's getting millions a year, has got a private jet and a house in Orange County. Look, USC, I'll do this for half the salary, first class on Delta, and a house in just say Redondo Beach. How about that? Better deal for you? Good. My gosh, Lincoln, use your timeouts, buddy. You're better than this. We all know. We've seen it. Be Lincoln Riley, not whoever this is right now. Disappointed. Number 4, the Father Time is Undefeated award goes to poor Cam Rising, who played very badly against Arizona State, now out indefinitely. And this might be it for Cam Rising at Utah. And that finger injury, clearly he was not right. Coming back through 3 interceptions. When has Cam Rising ever thrown 3 interceptions like that and been completely ineffective in a game? The other side of that coin is Arizona State's good. I know it's hard to say, but Arizona State is good. So we have to admit that. But I have long held the theory that having a 25 or 26-year-old quarterback maybe not the best idea because most good 25 and 26-year-old quarterbacks are professional quarterbacks in one of the several professional leagues we have available in the United States and Canada. Cam Rising, not that. So maybe it's just time for Utah to move on down the line. Number 3, the We Miss Being Angry at You award goes to West Virginia and Neil Brown. They're 3-3, and their 3 losses are to the 3 best teams they've played. They've lost to Pitt, they've lost to Penn State, they've lost to Iowa State. So where does that put you? In the middle of the pack. They need a rally, or Neil Brown's going to go through, again, what he had to go through the last couple years. I like Neil Brown. I think he's the right guy at West Virginia, but the proof's always in the pudding, and they keep losing to the better teams they play. Let's just call him a poor man's James Franklin. James Franklin's similar issue at Penn State, but maybe we're going to see that change down the line as they get into some of their tougher games this year. But they're not beating their quality opponents. They're beating exactly who they should beat and nobody that they're picked to lose to. And that Iowa State game was at home, and they were thoroughly dominated through parts of it, especially with Iowa State's running game. Number 2, the How You Like Me Now award. Let's get back to Arizona State. And Kenny Dillingham and what he's doing there is fantastic. He's got them believing in themselves. Sam Levitt gets better every week. And Cam Scattaboo is the man. My gosh, is he fun to watch, and he's tough to tackle. Dallas Cowboys, please take note. I've done this a couple times today. I don't know why I'm doing this. It's part of the thing today. It's the bit. Arizona State, only 1 loss on the year, and they are rolling along, and they are playing confident and tough and just took down who we in the media voted to be the Big 12 champion. Shows what we know, and it also shows how unpredictable college football is becoming week after week. And the number 1, the Here Comes Heartburn Award for Ryan Day. Did they lose because of Ryan Day? I don't think so. Oregon's a really good team. Dylan Gabriel's fantastic in big games. Just rewind to Texas a year ago. That's what he does. He wins big games when people don't give them much of a chance. That's what he does. He did it at Oklahoma, he did it at UCF, and now he's doing it at Oregon. And they were home dogs, and guess what? They won. They beat one of the deepest teams in the country, although maybe that award goes to the University of Texas right now and not Ohio State. That remains to be seen down the line. Is this a devastating loss for the Buckeyes? No. Does this take them out of the playoff? In no way does it take them out of the playoff. Does it change their trajectory? Not that much. But for Ryan Day, a guy who's been accused of having his worst record in big games, like Michigan or this one, this is just going to be more heartburn from a fan base that may not fully appreciate what they have at head coach, but they're not paying him all that money and using all that money on NIL to lose games that are big time, that are playoff implicators. Now, this is their first loss, might be their last loss. We don't know, but this is going to give Ryan Day some heartburn because people are going to be picking Will Howard, they're going to be picking at him until he hoists that trophy at the end of a season. Whether that's this year or into the future, he's going to have his naysayers. And even though he doesn't lose that much, when he does lose, it stings double hard. This is the top 5. We say adios, ahora.
Paul, thank you very much. Getting in your Spanish, huh?
Yeah, I've been practicing actually lately.
I could tell. It sounded pretty good. Thank you, Garrett Ross. Appreciate it. Emery Winter, who's working on 365 Sports tonight. If you have not hit the like or subscribe button, please do. And if you have subscribed, and please pass the word on to somebody else. The chat room was great today. Thanks again to the Super Chats, Katie Rader, and also to Kim Coulter. Paxton, congratulations on Pick'em. We've got a lot more to get to tomorrow, and we will. Thank you every day. We never take it for granted. For Craig Smoak and Paul Catalina, I'm David Smoak. Have a great night. This is 365 Sports.